Chapter 340. Of course, one could simply regard the sealed dimension ring as an enlarged version of a storage ring. But to use it like this, especially for an alchemist, was a great waste. After Qin Yu obtained the sealed dimension ring, under the envious gazes of countless people, he directly recognized it as its master. After a drop of blood was absorbed by it, he could feel the endless distance, a tiny node in the nothingness. That was the spatial fragment that the sealed dimension ring was connected to. After enduring the entire process of handing out rewards, Qin Yu didn't care at all. Because the royal family special envoy announced that they would restart the refinement of the revival good fortune pill, it set off countless cries of alarm. The other cultivators around him also had excited looks on their faces. After the royal family special envoy finished saying that he would leave for the capital city tomorrow, he turned and left without hesitation. He hurried back to his residence and closed the courtyard doors. Taking out the sealed dimension ring, Qin Yu didn't hesitate to probe it with his divine sense. In his mind, there was a faint buzzing sound. Then, his thoughts became a bit more numb. Perhaps calling it numb wasn't the right word to describe it. It was like he was wrapped up in an invisible strength, making everything around him blurry and slow. Luckily, this feeling only lasted for an extremely short period of time. Then, Qin Yu discovered that his consciousness had appeared in a dim space. His eyes swept the surroundings. What entered his eyes was an extremely desolate world. The ground was shattered and covered in giant cracks that crisscrossed and cut apart everything. It was like an ugly, giant spider web, as if it had experienced a calamity. In the distance, a mountain peak had shattered. Boulders tumbled down, smashing into the dried-up river at the foot of the mountain, nearly burying it. This spatial fragment was unexpectedly large. Unfortunately, it had clearly suffered irreparable damage. The heaven and earth spiritual strength in the air was so thin that it was nearly undetectable. If this was all, then such a large spatial fragment could be used purely as a storage magic tool. It would have an inestimable value. But the reality was that at the end of his line of sight, at the edge of this spatial fragment, the sky would occasionally twist. Space cracks would appear, disappearing and reappearing, repeating this process over and over again. Without a doubt, the constantly disappearing and reappearing space cracks indicated that the stability of this spatial fragment had been damaged. Moreover, as time passed, this collapse would become increasingly strong. Eventually, it would sweep through the entire space and completely destroy it, vanishing into nothingness. It was no wonder that the South Shine Nation would be so magnanimous and add this sealed dimension ring to the first place reward. Qin Yu felt helpless and a bit of regret. His vision fell onto a dark red bead of blood in front of him. Although he didn't know why his blood would appear here when he completed the master recognition, he knew its true function the moment he saw it. His divine sense fused into his blood. Then, a faint layer of blood-red color rapidly expanded outwards, outlining his figure. As his feet landed on the ground, the pale blood-red Qin Yu looked down at his hands and feet. He felt a deep awe towards the transcendent calamity immortal realm existence that had refined the sealed dimension ring. To be able to alter the laws and directly use a drop of blood to condense a body similar to an avatar was already beyond the imagination of ordinary cultivators. Unfortunately, this spatial fragment would be destroyed within 3 to 5 years. Otherwise, if he could control this vast space, it would be of great help to his future cultivation. As this thought flashed through his mind, Qin Yu's condensed figure's eyes widened in shock. In the next moment, the space in front of him rippled like water, gently shaking. Then, a thumb-sized lantern slowly but surely squeezed out from within. That's right, it was squeezed out, as if it were withstanding an unimaginable imprisonment. But all of this came to an abrupt end when it truly entered this barren and incomplete spatial fragment. It was as if everything about it had been completely cut off by the nothingness of the outside world, isolated and no longer sensed. Yu had seen the little blue lamp countless times, but he had never felt such an indescribable sense of relaxation from it like today. It was like a towering mountain had been removed from its head, no longer suppressing it. Thus, in the next moment, the little blue lamp truly released its strength without any scruples. An extremely dazzling deep blue light erupted out, like a broken dam. It was so bright and dazzling that tears began to flow from Yu's eyes. But Yu's instincts told him that he shouldn't close his eyes, otherwise he would miss out on something extremely important. Thus, as tears streamed down his face, he opened his eyes wide and witnessed a scene that could only be called a miracle. The little blue lamp that erupted with endless deep blue light slowly flew into the skies above his head. As it rose higher and higher, the pure deep blue light gradually faded away. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple, 7 colors were separated out. Or, it was more accurate to say that these colors formed the deep blue light, dazzling and dazzling. The little blue lamp rose higher and higher, as if it would fly to the ends of space. The 7 colors began to fade, turning into a warm and transparent color. Like this, the little blue lamp that flew into the skies turned into a great sun that couldn't be looked at directly. It sprinkled down endless light, illuminating the earth. Yu was bathed in the warm sunlight. His eyes widened, filled with shock. He discovered that he had never truly understood the little blue lamp. It was actually able to produce such an astonishing change. A sun, through his connection with the little blue lamp, Yu could see through all appearances and find the core of the great sun where the little blue lamp was. But right now, its aura and the light and heat it released were no different from that of a sun. Suddenly, Yu discovered that he had completely fused together with the earth beneath his feet. He closed his eyes and could feel every tiny crack in the distant broken mountain range, as well as a sickly and weak unknown grass deep within it. But at this time, Yu could clearly see that the withered leaves of this grass began to vigorously shake. In just several breaths of time, it was restored to a rich verdant green and exuberant vitality began to emit from its body. It seemed that with the arrival of the little blue lamp and the great sun that descended into this world, the grass had also been restored to its vitality. Yu could clearly feel the joy and excitement it exuded. And more importantly, it seemed as if he could control everything in this space with just a thought. After a moment of hesitation, Yu opened his eyes. He lifted a hand and grasped the air. Then, with a fluctuation in space, a complete green grass appeared. Even its inconceivably developed roots that were buried deep underground weren't damaged at all. This was because when Yu sent out his will, the soil that buried the roots were directly repelled by an invisible strength, allowing the grass to regain its freedom. Yu couldn't suppress the shock on his face. He gently touched the grass with his fingers and felt the rough friction. He knew that all of this wasn't an illusion. The verdant branches and leaves cheered as they twined around his hand, conveying their excitement, joy, and gratitude. After a long period of silence, Yu let go of his hand. The grass vanished into thin air, returning to its original position where it was buried in the soil. There wasn't any difference from before. This was because his will was to restore the grass to its original state. Yu didn't know why such an unbelievable scene had appeared in front of him, but he knew that it was related to the little blue lamp. This was because he could clearly feel that it wasn't he who had truly become the master of this world. Rather, it was the little blue lamp that had given him the strength to control everything. This was because the connection between Yu and the little blue lamp had taken another step forward. Yes, when the little blue lamp fused into this space and gave Yu the authority to control everything, they had truly fused together and could no longer be separated. In other words, it was only on this day that Yu truly possessed the little blue lamp. His eyes swept over the shattered earth. Although it was still barren and messy, Yu knew that it was no longer the same as before. It was on the verge of death, but it had become a rebirth. Within his dwelling, Chinyu's eyelashes gently trembled and he slowly opened his eyes. He was still himself and his aura hadn't changed at all. But his eyes were a bit more profound, and there was an invisible dignity to them. The reason for that was because he had become the ruler of a certain space. He had grasped supreme authority. This was an invisible change that had brought him. Chinyu's original goal in participating in the South Shine Nation's youth alchemy competition was to obtain the treasure furnace's remnant spirit. But now, it seemed that his greatest harvest was this sealed dimension ring. Chinyu's eyes fell and the sealed dimension ring faded away. It didn't vanish, but became something that only he could see. This wasn't a function of the sealed dimension ring, but a power that Chinyu naturally obtained after controlling that space. He took out the fleeting flame cauldron and handed the cauldron's remnant spirit to it. This palm-sized cauldron that was covered in rust suddenly erupted with boundless light. Bright lines appeared on its surface and then it started burning. Within the flames, all of the impurities and filth that had accumulated on its surface were burned to nothingness, revealing its true form. This was a dazzling pill furnace fragment. Even though it was only a tiny part of it, one could still feel the formidable power contained within. Whoosh! The burning treasure furnace fragment flew into the fleeting flame furnace. Waves of heat instantly erupted, causing the surface of the fleeting flame furnace to turn crimson. Chinyu's eyes flashed. He discovered that at this time, he had an inexplicable intuition that the fleeting flame furnace would smoothly absorb the treasure furnace's remnant spirit. He didn't know why he thought this, but he was sure of it. Suppressing these thoughts, Chinyu turned his head and looked at Ninth Province. Although it was silent, Chinyu could actually feel a trace of sorrow coming from it. Inexplicably, Chinyu seemed to be infected by it. His mood darkened with it. Then, after Ninth Province, he saw the figure of another pill furnace. It was a very, very large pill furnace, so large that the mountains, rivers, and even the endless oceans seemed incomparably small in front of it. It stood tall in the sea of stars, as if it were an indispensable part of the vast starry sky. However, this inconceivably large pill furnace was covered in cracks, as if it had been broken into countless pieces by an unbearable strength. A rich death energy lingered around it. This pill furnace was already dead. As this thought appeared in Chinyu's mind, the scene in front of him suddenly trembled and then vanished from sight. Chapter 341. The machinery of a country could always erupt with unimaginably formidable energy. A temporary transmission array that connected the Marshall Field to the capital city was constructed overnight. After a rigorous test confirmed that there were no problems, the cultivator in charge of this matter respectfully reported back and received a great reward from the royal family's special envoy. Little friends, the transmission array has been prepared and we will immediately arrive at the capital city. Because this is a newly opened transmission route and because time is a bit tight, there might be some bumps during the transmission process. I ask that little friends be patient. Once we arrive at the capital city, it will naturally be more comfortable. The special envoy smiled. His chubby face was filled with warmth, making it easy for others to develop a favorable impression of him. Schwa, Space Twisted. Yunilan, Ming Siyuan, and Yuan Tiangang, three Blue Sea super powerhouses, appeared at the same time. The Lord Envoy ran over, bowing and bowing. His manners were so thoughtful that it left one feeling a bit sick of him. Yunilan's eyes flashed with disgust, but he didn't say anything. He only lightly said, "Open the transmission array." He turned and gestured, "Revered Ming, revered Yuan, please. Exalted Yun, please." The three of them stepped into the transmission array. The special envoy didn't show any anger at being treated coldly. He still had a bright smile on his face as he arranged for the 13 young cultivators to enter the range of the array formation. Originally, there should only be 10 people with the qualifications to go to the capital city. But with a single night's buffer, there was room for many things to change. Thus, the number of spots was temporarily increased, turning into these 13 people. Hold on. Several cultivators ran over with anxious voices. The middle-aged cultivator in the lead had a pale complexion. He clenched his teeth and said, "We agree to Lord Envoy's request. Please allow my son to enter." Beside him, a young cultivator in blue robes was flushed red with excitement. The special envoy smiled. "Patriarch Nandong, I'm really sorry, but the spots have already been decided upon and it isn't good to change them. If there is a need, perhaps next time." These words nearly caused the Nandong family to vomit blood. Next time, your sister. If they missed out on the chance to refine the revival good fortune pill, who knew how many years it would be before they could do so again? Patriarch Nandong took a deep breath and squeezed out a smile. "I ask Lord Envoy to bend the rules a little. We are willing to pay extra." The special envoy waved his hand, interrupting him. "The transmission array has been opened. I have other matters to attend to, so I won't stay any longer. Farewell." He turned around and walked towards the teleportation portal. How could the juniors of the Nandong family endure this? As the good fortune in front of them flew out of their hands, they clenched their jaws and cursed, "Who do you think you are? You are nothing more than a—" He didn't manage to finish his sentence because the envoy turned around and looked at him indifferently. "Caw, caw," it was teeth chattering. Patriarch Nandong's complexion changed. "Special envoy, please show mercy." Yunilan said coldly, "Wushang, you dare to do such a disgusting thing and spoil my appetite. I won't forgive you." The envoy hurriedly withdrew his gaze and smiled humbly. "Of course, everything will be as you say." He quickly stepped into the transmission array as if nothing had happened just now. But in the instant that he stepped into the transmission array, the young man from the Nandong clan suddenly slumped to the ground. His body twitched, and thick and foul black blood gushed out from his nose and mouth. It was as if his organs had already rotted away. Patriarch Nandong's body shivered, but he didn't dare to say a single word. He turned and shouted out loud before hurrying away with his only son. Within the transmission array, the 13 young cultivators felt their hearts chill. They never imagined that this Lord's special envoy who smiled before speaking, who was like a gentle spring breeze, was actually such a ruthless and sharp character. Today, they had learned another lesson. It was true that they couldn't judge a book by its cover. In the future, they would have to be a bit more respectful and cautious in front of the Lord's special envoy. A rich spiritual light shot into the skies. The space in front of them began to twist. In the next moment, the figures of the people within the transmission array vanished from sight. Although the Lord's special envoy had already warned them, the shaking of the transmission array was still unbearable. After an unknown period of time, the dazzling colors in front of them suddenly vanished from sight. Qin Yu hurriedly took a deep breath and suppressed the tumbling in his chest. He didn't even have the mind to pay attention to the scenery around him. Among the 13 juniors, besides White Fong Fong, there was also a woman. After enduring for several moments, she finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She turned her head and vomited. As she vomited, everyone's patience was completely broken. For a time, filth flew everywhere and a sour and pungent smell billowed outwards. Qin Yu originally wanted to hold on, but he didn't know what his companion called Wu Yuan had eaten this morning. The yellow liquid was simply unbearable. Thus, he turned his head and vomited along with everyone else, enjoying himself to his heart's content. The complexions of the 3 Blue Sea super powerhouses didn't change at all. They stepped out of the transmission array, allowing the juniors to throw their filth behind them. The Lord's special envoy had a guilty expression. From time to time, he would walk over and gently pat this and that. He was truly competent to the extreme. Unfortunately, when they saw the special envoy's face, they couldn't help but recall the fate of the young Nandong family cultivator and the mucus that had gushed out from his 7 apertures. Thus, the special envoy helped the youths vomit even more heartily. After a long time, the youths that were causing the pollution finally stopped. They nervously walked out of the transmission array. Luckily, they were worried for nothing. Although there was an extremely high standard reception team outside the transmission array, it didn't have much to do with them. The Southshine Nation's capital was a place where all the elites of the nation gathered. But the arrival of 3 Blue Sea super powerhouses was enough to make them lower their noble heads. Revered Yun, Ming, and Yuan were respectfully invited onto a luxurious car that had been waiting for them for a long time. It could be foreseen that there would be a high-class banquet to entertain these 3 Blue Seas. Although the youths also had their own car, it was parked in a corner. It was a common-looking bus that could hold 20 people. The name bus was indeed a bit strange, but everyone in the entire land of divinity and demons called it this, so the Southshine Nation naturally followed suit. Although the interior of this bus was incomparably comfortable, the difference was far too great when compared to the treatment of the 3 Blue Seas. In particular, the cold expressions of the 3 officials within the bus caused the atmosphere inside to become even more depressing. The reason was simple. These 3 officials were all divine soul realm masters. The reason that proud children of heaven were called proud children of heaven was because they represented the hopes and achievements of the future. Of all of this, the word future was the key. Of the 10 proud children of heaven, at most 3 or 4 would be able to break into divine soul. And of these 3 or 4, those that could take a step further and reach the Blue Sea realm, according to a strict statistical probability, the chances of that happening were minuscule, almost negligible. Thus, when a divine soul cultivator faced these 13 outstanding talents of the Southshine Nation's official tournament, there was no need for them to look up to them. This was why the atmosphere was so depressing. However, there were always accidents. For instance, Qin Yu was currently enjoying a completely different treatment from his 12 other companions. Fellow Daoist Ning Qin, please sit here. The official smiled. These 4 chairs were specially customized. We will arrive in a moment, so it will be more comfortable to sit here. Qin Yu expressed his thanks and sat down beside the 3 divine soul cultivators. Fellow Daoist Ning Qin, how do you feel right now? I heard that the transmission just now was a bit too bumpy. Drink a bottle of iced plum juice and you'll feel a bit better. As he spoke, he took out a jade bottle. From the packaging, one could see that it was high class. After opening it, a light sweet and sour smell wafted out. Just a single breath made one feel much better. Gulp, it was unknown who gulped, but in this depressing atmosphere, it was particularly clear. Qin Yu looked over. This little girl White Fingfing's face was flushed red, but she tried her best to maintain her calm. She had an indifferent expression that said, "Why are you looking at me?" He smiled and passed over the plum juice. "You drink it, I feel fine." White Fong had a grateful expression. She thought that Big Brother Baoyu really did care for her. She took the bottle and drank to her heart's content. As she glanced over the envious eyes of several people, she revealed a smug look. It seems I was negligent and forgot to give a bottle to Miss White. Fellow Daoist Ning Qin, you should also drink some. As he spoke, he took out another bottle. Unfortunately, no one else had a share. This contempt was too obvious. Most of the young cultivators in the carriage came from extraordinary backgrounds. In particular, those that had grudges with Qin Yu and White Fong found it hard to endure. For instance, that fellow classmate Zhao Jiutian, who had been severely wounded and on the verge of death, had suddenly become full of energy overnight. There was a light cough. Although it wasn't heavy, it could still be heard. The official that took out 2 bottles of plum juice looked at him but didn't say anything. But everyone soon learned that just because he didn't say anything didn't mean he didn't have any opinions in his heart. The bus stopped in the southeast direction of the capital city, in an area of exquisite and luxurious houses. 3 divine soul cultivators stepped out first. They lightly said, "You will be staying in the capital city for the time being. I will be assigning you your living quarters." Qin Yu's residence was naturally the best. It was near a small lake and was surrounded by lush trees. A light breeze carried with it a light moisture that made one feel refreshed. White Feng Feng was next to him. Although her position was a bit far back, it was still pretty good. Then there was Wu Yuan, who had vomited to the point of intoxication. Looking at his expression, he was also very satisfied with his own residence. Following that was a series of assignments. Black Bebe, who had relied on his connections to obtain a spot, was also given an ordinary detached courtyard. Zhao Jiutian couldn't hold himself back any longer. This was because even now, he still hadn't been assigned a place to live. But all the good courtyards within his line of sight already had an owner. Although it didn't matter where a cultivator lived, they still had to consider something like face. In particular, our classmate Zhao Jiutian. His background was extraordinary, and although the competition was disrupted, the upper 5th grade child and mother Enyang Pil was more than enough to be proud of. Cough. May I ask the 3 of you, where will I live? The plum juice official had a faint expression. Fellow Daoist Zhao Jiutian, the courtyards here have already been arranged. I will have to trouble you to live across from us. Following his gaze, Zhao Jiutian nearly fainted from anger. His complexion paled as if he had swallowed a giant fly. The youth sighed inwardly. This official was truly worthy of being a cultivator of the capital city. He didn't give Cleansing Temple any face at all, his actions were so overbearing. Chapter 342. Zhao Jiutian was filled with anger but he didn't dare to reveal it. This was because he could see from the eyes of the 3 divine soul cultivators that they were eager to try. It was clear that if he didn't know what was good for him and continued to cause trouble, the 3 of them would be very happy. Seeing Zhao Jiutian admit defeat, the 3 divine soul cultivators didn't insist. They simply gave him a few simple instructions. After the torment of the transmission array, the youths were a bit dispirited. After learning that they would be notified of further arrangements, they bid their farewells and returned to their residences to rest. Qin Yu pushed open the door and entered. There were no maids in the small courtyard. He was satisfied with this. He casually walked around and didn't sense anything wrong, so he felt a bit more at ease. Thinking about it, if the dignified South Shine Nation had to use such despicable methods on juniors like them, then that would be looked down upon too much. However, out of caution, Qin Yu laid down an array formation and took out 9th province to isolate it from prying eyes. Then, he began to swallow pills. However, the pills he refined had been used up during this period of time and he didn't have much left. He would need to find some time to refine some more. As for materials, he had plenty in his storage ring so there was no need to purchase them for now. The next day, Qin Yu didn't receive any notice from the South Shine Nation officials. Instead, an acquaintance arrived. Auntie Hong. Qin Yu saw the person outside the door and the eyes peeking out from beneath her hood. His thoughts stirred and he moved to the side to let her in. Auntie Hong swept her eyes around. Qin Yu knew what she was thinking. He smiled and said, "It's fine. It's safe here." "That's good." Auntie Hong pulled off her hood and let out a long breath. She didn't slow down at all. "Mr. Qin, after you obtained first place in the competition, we wanted to contact you, but we were all refused by the South Shine Nation officials. It was only when we heard that the Revival Good Fortune pill had been restarted that we felt relieved." This was an explanation for the inn's silence. Although Qin Yu didn't care much about this, he still felt a bit better. Auntie Hong, is there something you need from me today? Auntie Hong observed Qin Yu's expression. Seeing that he wasn't dissatisfied, she relaxed and her expression became calm. I came to congratulate Mr. Qin for obtaining first place in the competition. The young master already knows of this matter. It's just that he has important matters to attend to and can't leave for the time being, so he asked me to give this to Mr. Qin as a congratulatory gift. As Auntie Hong spoke, she carefully took out a wooden box. Qin Yu took it. This jade box was very light and there wasn't anything strange about it. But after opening it, a dignified expression appeared on his face. After several breaths of silence, he said, "This gift is too precious." Auntie Hong smiled. Young master said that this is what Mr. deserves. The inn has already obtained a great harvest from you. Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. All right. Then I ask Auntie Hong to express my thanks for me. The young master was the true master of the inn and his background was extremely mysterious. Since Auntie Hong didn't say much, Qin Yu didn't ask too much. Auntie Hong let out a sigh of relief. It's good that you accept it. I was afraid that Mr. Qin wouldn't want it. What a headache. Qin Yu couldn't help but shake his head. I can modestly decline this sort of treasure, but I still can't bear to let it go. Auntie Hong was amused. That's good. I've already taken a risk by coming here, so I won't stay any longer. I hope that Mr. Qin can smoothly refine the revival good fortune pill. She bid her farewells and left. Before leaving, she gave Qin Yu a jade slip. Inside was information regarding the revival good fortune pill. This caused a smile to appear on Qin Yu's face. What he disliked the most were the unknowns of things. In this aspect, the inn had helped him a great deal. However, Qin Yu wasn't in a hurry to look at the information in the jade slip. Instead, he placed the wooden box in front of him once more. Inside, there was a branch as thick as a finger, green all over. It looked as if it had just been cut off from the tree this morning. The cut was still fresh, as if one could touch it with their hand, and it was slightly moist. But although this tree branch looked ordinary, it really wasn't ordinary at all. Qin Yu could clearly feel a massive amount of energy hidden within. Once this energy was activated, the protection it formed would be something that even an ordinary Blue Sea Realm Supermaster might not be able to break in a single strike. This was why Qin Yu said that it was far too precious. These words were the truth. However, Qin Yu didn't feel any unease as he accepted it. He had indeed helped the inn a great deal and both sides could be considered to have gained something. After putting away this tree branch that could save his life in a critical moment, Qin Yu picked up the jade slip. After sensing that everything was normal, he probed it with his divine sense. A moment later, with a loud cracking sound, the jade slip disintegrated into powder that sprinkled down from his fingertips. Qin Yu opened his eyes, revealing a dignified expression. As he thought, the refinement of the revival good fortune pill wasn't ordinary at all. Around noon, the South Shine Nation officials arrived. Qin Yu pushed open the door and walked out. The other young cultivators that had been chosen had basically all arrived. The last one to arrive was Xiao Jiutian. There was nothing he could do about it, this direct descendant of Cleansing Temple lived far away. The ones who came today weren't the three people that had escorted them yesterday. Instead, the one leading them was the Lord's special envoy. Seeing his familiar smiling expression, even the dissatisfied Xiao Jiutian felt his heart tighten. He quickly restrained his gloomy expression. I fear that little friends will be staying in the capital city for a period of time. Allow me to introduce myself so that we can all get along in the future. The Lord's special envoy smiled. My surname is Qin and my name is Wushang. I am temporarily the chief steward of the royal palace, commonly known as an errand boy. I have no specific duties and follow the will of the nation ruler. I will go wherever I need to. The 13 young cultivators all bowed once more. Chief Steward Chin smiled and waved his hand. Little friends, you are all proud sons of heaven and your future achievements will be limitless. I don't dare to be arrogant. You and I will treat each other as equals. Of course, it was best to listen to these words. If they took them seriously, then they would truly be reckless. Alright, the reason I came here today is to invite all of you to observe the good fortune tablet. It's getting late, so let's set off. The people weren't the people from yesterday and the bus was still the same bus. Chin Yu chose a seat and nodded towards White Fong Fong before closing his eyes to meditate. His performance caused the hostile and provocative schoolmate Zhao Jiutian to have nowhere to vent his resentment. He felt a great deal of suffocation in his chest. Luckily, schoolmate Zhao Jiutian had a good ability to adjust himself. He thought that once he began refining the revival good fortune pill, he would thoroughly crush Chin Yu beneath his feet. Not only did he lose the competition, but the Great Desolate Lake had taken advantage of his weakness. If it weren't for the fact that the South Shine Nation had restarted refining the revival good fortune pill, his fate wouldn't have been any better. Towards the Chin Yu who had caused all of this, it was reasonable for Zhao Jiutian to hate him. The bus traveled in silence. An hour later, they arrived outside a heavily guarded square building. After stepping off the bus, there was a wide and straight road. However, this road was incomparably cold and deserted. Looking around, there wasn't even half a shadow. Chief Steward Chin personally appeared. Everything proceeded smoothly. After the guards verified their identities, they opened the incomparably heavy iron doors. Someone was already waiting inside. Greetings, Lord Chief Steward. Wei Ziqing respectfully bowed. Although this Chief Steward Chin didn't have a good reputation, such as being greedy, ruthless, violent, and so on and so forth, he had been able to sit firmly in the position of the royal palace's chief steward for so many years. Just this point alone was enough to earn his respect. Chief Steward Chin warmly smiled. Lord Wei, there is no need to be so polite. I was ordered to bring these 13 little friends here today. I will have to trouble you with the following matters. He turned and continued to say, I will wait here for these little friends to come out. There is no need to worry about the first day. Just consider this a time to adapt. Wei Ziqing stood up. Lord Chief Steward, please wait a moment. Once I have arranged everything, I will rush over to greet you. A few days ago, I obtained a new wild turtle. Knowing that Chief Steward Chin was coming, I slaughtered it last night and stewed it. It will be ready to eat later. Chief Steward Chin's eyes brightened. Then I'll have to trouble Lord Wei. Both sides bid their farewells. Wei Ziqing and the 4 cultivators behind him led the 13 young cultivators deep into the 4-room building. As he spoke with the Lord Chief Steward, Lord Wei Ziqing appeared kind and amiable. But after he left, his aura was as cold as a stone. His entire body, from top to bottom, seemed to emit a cold and gloomy aura from every pore. As for the 4 people behind him, their complexions were deathly pale. They didn't say a word, as if they were corpses buried underground all year round. Their eyes were so cold that it caused one's heart to tremble. They passed through a long passage. Torches leapt on both sides, illuminating everyone's complexions and making them appear a bit gloomy and strange. This passage was very long. At the end was a large black door that seemed to be one with the surrounding thick black rock. With just a glance, one could feel its formidable defensive capabilities. Wei Ziqing took out a token. A beam of light fell from his head and swept over the token. With 2 light beeps, the black door quietly opened. However, this door seemed to contain some unimaginable strength. It caused space to distort, making it impossible to see what was inside. The good fortune tablet is inside. The 4 of them will stand guard here. After 12 hours, whether or not they have harvests, they must leave. As Wei Ziqing coldly spoke, he turned and left. His actions were straightforward and efficient. The 4 cultivators standing guard outside the black door were expressionless. The feeling they gave off was that they were 4 door gods with paralyzed faces. Although these 4 people hadn't released the least bit of a powerful aura, there was one thing that was beyond doubt: they were extremely dangerous. No one thought that they would be able to approach the good fortune tablet so easily. The South Shine Nation officials didn't send anyone to follow them. Were they not afraid that they would damage the tablet? Zhao Jiutian sneered. Stop dreaming. The good fortune tablet is a rare treasure of the heavens and earth. Not even a Blue Sea Supreme Elder can damage it in the slightest. As he spoke, he stepped forwards and was the first to step through the door. The young cultivators were stunned. They thought that this was truly worthy of being a direct disciple of Cleansing Temple. He even knew these secrets. Just as they thought this, they cursed at how despicable he was. They quickly followed, as if they were afraid that if they fell behind, they wouldn't be able to refine the revival good fortune pill. Qin Yu wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he looked around. In this short period of time, the only ones left outside were him, White Feng Feng, and Black Bebe. The 4 guards were expressionless and didn't seem to have any intention of rushing them. It was like their duty was to act as a human alarm clock that would remind everyone to leave after 12 hours. White Feng Feng blinked. Ning Qin, fellow Daoist, is there something wrong? Qin Yu's eyes flashed with embarrassment. How could he have seen anything wrong? He had only subconsciously wanted to delay for some time. He shook his head and said, "It's nothing. Let's go in." As he spoke, he led the way through the door. Although there was only a single step between the inside and outside, it was like 2 completely different worlds. A dark golden light sprinkled down. It wasn't dazzling, but rather quiet and restrained. As one bathed in it, they could clearly feel the rich aura of endless years. This should be a naturally formed cave. Above them, there were all sorts of strangely shaped rocks that had been corroded. Beneath this golden light, they seemed to be plated with a mysterious hue. And the source of this dark golden light came from the center of the cave. There was a stone tablet that stood on the ground. The stone tablet was over 10 feet high and wasn't too large. But as long as anyone saw it, they would feel that it was terrifyingly high, as if it stood there supporting the world. Chapter 343. Regarding this stone tablet, the jade slip that the inn had given him contained some groundless legends. But, since they had been passed down, there was at least some truth to them. The general idea was as follows: 100,000 years ago, the vault of heaven suddenly collapsed and a great stone tablet descended from the void. After a fierce struggle, it was obtained by the Huluan clan. Then, after 10,000 years, the influence of the clan continued to grow. Finally, they established the South Shine Nation, continuing on for dozens of generations without perishing. Finally, they became a royal bloodline with a deep background in the land of divinity and demons. The great stone tablet here referred to the good fortune tablet. There were many other theories, but in summary, the general meaning was the same. The Huluan clan's prosperity was because they possessed this stone tablet. As for what the truth was, no one knew. But, it was an indisputable fact that the good fortune tablet possessed unimaginable might. It was just that the way this might was displayed was a bit different. Cultivators, and only those that didn't surpass 100 years of age, could face the stone tablet and perceive the mysterious pill recipe. The pill they refined was the revival good fortune pill. This pill recipe existed within the soul, as if it were a gift from the will of the world. It was impossible to describe, nor could it be spoken of to others. Only the one perceiving it could control it. But there was one point that could be confirmed after countless tests of refining the revival good fortune pill. That was that no cultivator could perceive a pill recipe that was different from the others. However, there was one point that was similar, and that was that to refine the revival good fortune pill, one needed to consume the lifespan of the alchemist. Although something like lifespan was illusory, to a cultivator, it was something that they could sense. It was an important existence that no one could ignore. After all, in the end, all living beings had a spirit and cultivated in order to complete a transformation of their life. They wanted to become more perfect, more powerful, and at the same time, they could live longer. Objectively speaking, the latter was the most important factor. Thus, a pill that consumed one's lifespan was incomparably strange and chilling. If it weren't for the fact that after refining the revival good fortune pill, one could offer a sacrifice to the good fortune tablet and obtain rich feedback from it, no one would have any interest in this pill. That's right, in order to refine the revival good fortune pill, one had to offer it as a sacrifice to the good fortune tablet. There were even some people that made extremely bold speculations about this. The good fortune tablet had a life of its own, a life form that they couldn't recognize. The reason it accepted the sacrifices was to absorb the lifespan of the cultivators that were sacrificed, allowing it to continue living. Thus, the good fortune tablet's gift was more like an exchange of some sort of trade. Qin Yu originally didn't believe these rumors. This was because this was just a stone tablet. Even if it contained a tremendous amount of power, how could it possibly possess life? But at this time, as he stood here and truly saw the good fortune tablet, he discovered that his previous views had been wrong. There were no words on the surface of the good fortune tablet. There were only dark golden textures that wove together. They were like wild weeds, but they also seemed to contain the highest mysteries of the world. It emitted a dark golden light that was majestic and vast. Its majestic aura was hidden, as if the slightest tremble could cause the world to tremble. Mysterious and powerful. But at this time, Qin Yu passed through the incomparably dazzling surface of the good fortune tablet and saw what was hidden within. This kind of thing was called old, weak, or rotten. That's right, this was what Qin Yu felt when he saw the good fortune tablet. He was well aware that this was the inconceivable ability he had obtained after thoroughly fusing with the little blue lamp and becoming the ruler of that distant space. None of this was an illusion. At this time, everything that the good fortune tablet revealed was fake. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the shaking in his heart. He maintained a calm expression. He discovered that after he saw through the good fortune tablet, he could faintly smell the nauseating smell of decay that it emitted. This smell was 10 times, 100 times richer than a corpse that had been buried underground for dozens of days. But besides him, Zhao Jiutian, Wei Feng, and the others seemed to be enjoying the feeling of approaching the good fortune tablet. They took deep breaths, as if they could absorb the most wonderful energy in the world. At this time, Qin Yu's heart chilled. He faintly understood why Wei Ziqing would turn around and leave without hesitation, and also why he told them that they could only stay for 12 hours at most. Perhaps in a relatively safe situation, this was the limit of what they could withstand. The rotten smell that lingered in his nose became increasingly heavy. Even if he held his breath, he still couldn't stop it from invading his senses. Qin Yu could only shift his attention elsewhere. He no longer looked at the good fortune tablet itself, but focused on its surface. As he looked at the dark golden textures, the rotten smell began to dissipate. At this time, the youths that entered the cave, besides Qin Yu, had all arrived near the good fortune tablet. They sat down cross-legged, suppressing the excitement in their hearts. With the mentality of a pilgrimage, they began to carefully perceive the dark golden textures on the surface of the good fortune tablet. This was because countless cultivators that had obtained good fortune from the good fortune tablet had clearly said that these textures were the only way to obtain an alchemy room. Zhao Zhuotian sat down cross-legged, doing his best to calm the shock and excitement in his heart. Just by sitting near the good fortune tablet and bathing in the dark golden light, his entire body felt warm. It was like his magic power and divine sense had become lively. Some of the shackles in his cultivation began to show signs of loosening. This was truly worthy of being the legendary supreme treasure of the South Shine Nation. Zhao Zhuotian's heart burned with an increasingly fiery heat. He had even greater expectations towards the good fortune tablet's gift. But the premise was that he had to perceive the pill recipe and smoothly refine the revival good fortune pill. He swept his eyes around. The young cultivators from all over had already begun to perceive the good fortune tablet. Qin Yu's lonely figure was particularly conspicuous in the back. Seeing his silence, Zhao Zhuotian coldly sneered inwardly. Qin Yu really was someone who had never seen the world before. After seeing the good fortune tablet, his mind had already been seized. With such a shrewd temperament, he still wanted to refine the revival good fortune pill. Dream on. Ning Qin, this time I will thoroughly trample you beneath my feet. I will return all the humiliation you gave me in double. Zhao Zhuotian's eyes revealed a strong self-confidence. He glanced around. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he flipped his hand and took out a pill. Indeed, perceiving the pill recipe of the revival good fortune pill mainly depended on the cultivator themselves. But there were some necessary supplementary conditions that could increase the chances of success. This pill was personally given to him by revered Cloud the night before he left. He clearly stated that it would be of great help to him when perceiving the good fortune tablet. With revered Yuan's status, he wouldn't speak without thinking. Thus, Zhao Zhuotian had great expectations for this pill. Opening his mouth and swallowing it, Zhao Zhuotian's eyes widened. This was because he discovered that the good fortune tablet in front of him had become incomparably clear. Those dark golden textures seemed to be engraved into his eyes, and he could clearly see where they extended and twisted. Between his consciousness, there was a faint hazy feeling, as if there was a bit more mist. Then, the dark golden textures in front of him began to slowly twist, as if they wanted to outline some sort of mark. Zhao Zhuotian was ecstatic. He had heard of this scene before. Without a doubt, this was the sign that the pill recipe was about to appear. As he thought, the pill that revered Yuan had given him contained an inconceivable strength. He, Zhao Zhuotian, would become the first person to perceive the pill recipe. His eyes swept around, looking at all the people that were painstakingly perceiving the pill recipe. His heart was filled with pride. None of them had even seen the door, but he had already stepped into it. This time, he would let everyone know that he was the strongest alchemist of the South Shine Nation's younger generation. As his heart was filled with lofty sentiments, Zhao Zhuotian suddenly discovered that there was a pair of eyes staring at him, filled with shock. It was Ning Qin. This attention just happened to satisfy the regret in Zhao Zhuotian's heart. Moreover, he was seen by the person he hated the most, Ning Qin. Without a doubt, he was even happier. Ha 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 ha. Ning Qin, do you see? I, Zhao Zhuotian, have already walked ahead of you. Satisfied, he left behind a cold and mocking gaze. Then, he looked away and began to fully focus on perceiving. Every second seemed to bring him great harvests. His face gradually flushed red with endless excitement. Indeed, Qin Yu was looking at classmate Zhao with shock. At this time, classmate Zhao's body was trembling slightly, as if he were intoxicated. Just now, he had inadvertently seen Zhao Zhuotian swallow a pill. Just as he was wondering what he was doing, he saw what happened next. The rotting stench that filled the entire cave, as well as the thick aura of decay that made it hard to breathe, seemed to be pulled by an invisible strength. After a brief period of silence, it began to gather without warning, forming a nearly pitch-black fog that covered Zhao Zhuotian. Every time he took a breath, he would breathe in endless rotting and decaying aura. Even the pores on his body were cheering as they opened and breathed in and out. His face revealed an expression of incomparable enjoyment and intoxication. His eyebrows were filled with joy and excitement, as if he had obtained a tremendous harvest as he breathed in and out. Qin Yu's chest tumbled. Luckily, he had experience with the transmission array and was able to barely suppress the urge to vomit. He quickly looked away, not daring to look again. But in his heart, he vaguely realized something. The cultivator sitting in front of the good fortune tablet should be absorbing this rotting and decaying aura in order to obtain the pill recipe for the revival good fortune pill. He glanced at the dazed and excited white Feng Feng. Qin Yu had an impulse to remind her, but in the end he remained silent. He couldn't take any risks. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause irreparable consequences. Moreover, since he had set a 12-hour limit, that meant she wouldn't suffer any irreparable harm. Qin Yu apologized inwardly. Then, he sat down cross-legged and put on a solemn and excited appearance. Then, he began to daydream. Yes, Qin Yu was only earnestly daydreaming. After seeing through the essence of the revival good fortune pill, it was naturally impossible for him to refine it on his own initiative, even though this would bring him rich rewards. This was because he had no way of knowing what would happen if he refined the revival good fortune pill and sacrificed it to this increasingly strange and sinister good fortune tablet. What Qin Yu was considering right now was to delay for some time. It would be best if he didn't refine the revival good fortune pill until the world-killing tribulation arrived, but this wasn't too realistic. After all, only by approaching the South Shine Nation's old ancestor could he survive the world-killing tribulation. If he didn't refine the revival good fortune pill, he wouldn't be able to obtain the attention of the South Shine Nation's old ancestor and he wouldn't be able to approach him. This was an unsolvable problem. Qin Yu suppressed this problem that gave him a headache. He thought to himself that he would delay for as long as he could. Chapter 344. 12 hours couldn't be said to be long, but it wasn't short either. After being in a daze for too long, one would inevitably feel bored. Cultivating was certainly the best choice to pass the time, but cultivating here wasn't a good choice at all. Qin Yu's eyes couldn't help but fall onto the surface of the stone tablet, onto the dark golden lines that wove together. At first he only wanted to pass the time. After all, these lines themselves were very beautiful. But after an unknown period of time, his entire mind was immersed within them. It was like in the entire world, there was nothing else left but him and these dark golden lines. In this trance-like state, even the good fortune tablet itself was ignored. Only these beautiful lines became increasingly clear, as if they were branded into his mind, impossible to erase. The dark golden lines in front of him began to twist. In Qin Yu's eyes, they turned into countless meridian-like existences, with unknown substances flowing within. However, most of these dark golden lines were already blocked and withered. There were many spots on them, and they were no longer able to smoothly flow through. When Qin Yu's attention focused on one of the blocked dark golden lines, he seemed to hear a pained gasp in his ears. He could feel the longing coming from it. As this longing poured into his mind, it transformed into information that only Qin Yu could sense. A throbbing feeling gushed out from deep within his heart. Qin Yu was startled awake, his eyes filled with shock. This is a pill recipe. At almost the same time, deep within the South Shine Nation's royal palace, on an altar deep underground, 9 oil lamps were placed in a circle. The flickering dark green flames faintly illuminated a figure sitting cross-legged within, a figure that resembled a skeleton. Suddenly, this figure's eyes opened. Like 2 bolts of lightning, they instantly tore through the darkness. On the first day, someone had managed to perceive the pill recipe for the revival good fortune pill. This was an unprecedented matter. Could that junior Ning Qin really be the turning point for this person to change his destiny and obtain a new life? The skeletal figure lifted a hand and pointed at the void. That thin and withered finger seemed as if it would break at the slightest bit of force. But at this time, an incomparably formidable strength gushed out from his fingertip. This strength pierced through the void, crossing a great distance and falling on the edge of the capital city, in a heavily guarded square building. In a certain grand hall, a large bell that was covered in a thick layer of dust began to ring without any warning. The deep and penetrating sound instantly resounded in all directions. Chief Steward Qin, who was sitting across from him, eating and drinking to his heart's content, suddenly looked up. His eyes flashed and he shouted, "Lord Wei." Wei Ziqing had already stood up. The drunkenness on his face had completely disappeared. He stood up and said, "Chief Steward, please wait a moment. I will go immediately." She turned to leave, but Qin Wusheng couldn't wait any longer. After a moment of hesitation, he strode after her. "Ha ha ha ha, I found it. Pill formula, this is a pill formula." Zhao Jiutian threw his head back and laughed heartily. His excited voice reverberated ceaselessly, jolting everyone back to their senses and causing them to reveal expressions of bewilderment. The first thought that popped into the minds of the youths was that this was impossible. In a short day, he had only managed to adapt to the good fortune tablet's aura, so how could he possibly perceive the pill recipe? However, what happened next completely shattered their hopes of getting lucky. The black door quietly opened and Wei Ziqing strode in. Following behind him was a joyful Chief Steward Qin, who comprehended the pill recipe. Zhao Jiutian stood up and bowed. "Lord Wei, Chief Steward Qin, it is this junior." A warm smile bloomed on Wei Ziqing's face. "So it was little friend Zhao Jiutian. You are truly a proud son of heaven," he praised. Chief Steward Qin frowned inwardly. He swept his eyes over Qin Yu, who seemed to be at a loss for what to do. He was surprised that it wasn't him. However, even if it wasn't him, it was still a good thing that someone had successfully perceived the pill recipe on the first day. Little friend Zhao Jiutian is truly worthy of being a direct descendant of Cleansing Temple. To be able to perceive the pill recipe on the first day, this is the first time this has happened since the revival good fortune pill has been refined. Chief Steward Qin turned and smiled. "Lord Wei, I will have to trouble you to look after little friend Zhao. You must satisfy all of little friend Zhao's needs so that he can successfully refine the pill as soon as possible." Wei Ziqing laughed. "Of course. Little friend Zhao, from today on, there is no need for you to rush back and forth. You can stay here and if there is anything you need, feel free to ask." Zhao Jiutian was overjoyed. "Thank you, Lord Wei, Chief Steward Qin." He swept his eyes around. Although he tried his best to remain calm, the arrogance in his eyes was still clear. Wherever he looked, the young cultivators all lowered their heads. Although they didn't want to admit it, Zhao Jiutian's performance was far, far better than theirs. Finally, his eyes stopped on Qin Yu. After discovering his stunned expression, Zhao Jiutian felt even more carefree. Ning Qin, today is the day that I wash away my shame and become famous once more." The high-spirited Zhao Jiutian was led away by Wei Ziqing and Chief Steward Qin with a smile. It could be foreseen that he would receive the best reception. After this interruption, the young cultivators no longer had the mood to continue perceiving the good fortune tablet. Thus, today's session ended early and they were let out. The bus was silent, with no one in the mood to speak. Today, everyone had come together, but when they left, someone had already obtained the right to stay behind. They were all proud and arrogant youths. Although they had lowered their heads, they still weren't convinced in their hearts. They gathered their strength and raging flames ignited in their hearts. White Fong Fong was a bit puzzled. She looked at Qin Yu for a moment. His eyes were closed in meditation and his expression hadn't changed at all from when he came. Didn't he feel a bit disappointed? She immediately thought that this was the attitude that her big brother Baoyu should have. So what if he fell behind for a while? There would always be a time when he would catch up. Hum. Her big brother Baoyu was truly the best. But how could this little girl know that her big brother Baoyu wasn't just disappointed, he was overjoyed. He almost wanted to shout out 3 times. Classmate Zhao Jiutian was a good person, a very good person. If it weren't for him also perceiving the pill recipe, Qin Yu feared he would have been in a dire situation. In fact, he might even be forced to start refining the revival good fortune pill. Moreover, most importantly, once he began refining the pill, no matter how much he didn't want to succeed, he wouldn't dare to play any tricks during the refining process. This was because every time the revival good fortune pill failed, what was lost was the lifespan of the refiner. This was far too terrifying. So, if possible, Qin Yu really wanted to give his classmate Zhao Jiutian a giant plaque. Written on it, an unrivaled good man. The bus silently returned to their residence. After White Fong Fong stepped off, she turned around and said, "Ning Qin, you can definitely do it. You can do it." This little girl decided to give her big brother Baoyu some moral support. But she ignored the pressure that these words might bring. Everyone that was preparing to leave suddenly stopped, their eyes falling onto Qin Yu's body. As the first-ranked participant of the competition and someone who was also highly regarded by the South Shine Nation officials, Zhao Jiutian had actually taken the lead and was the first to perceive the revival good fortune pill recipe. The pressure he felt should be the greatest. Thinking of this, everyone felt the pressure in their chests loosen a little and their breathing became smoother. Humans were worldly beings and they instinctively liked to compare themselves. When they discovered that someone was having a harder time than them, they would subconsciously feel relaxed. Oh, there's someone worse than me. White Fong Fong noticed the change in the atmosphere. She didn't like the way some people looked at her big brother Baoyu. But she didn't care about being angry. She only wanted to explain to her big brother Baoyu that she hadn't done it on purpose. But the more anxious she was, the more she didn't know what to say. Her face flushed red and she was about to cry. Qin Yu smiled, comforting her with his eyes. "You can do it too." His voice was calm and gentle, without the anger and shame that everyone imagined. Instead, there was a bit of indifference. This caused the young cultivators to be startled. Then, they felt a bit embarrassed and quickly lowered their heads to leave. This was because Qin Yu's current performance made them feel that their mental fortitude was far too poor. Without saying anything more, Qin Yu nodded and left. The next day, the bus arrived on time. Chief Steward Qin's smiling face appeared in front of everyone once more. "Little friends, I obtained a pleasant surprise yesterday. I hope that you can continue to work hard today." He swept his smiling eyes over Qin Yu and nodded in greeting. Then, he took a seat at the front. In the square building, behind Wei Ziqing stood an imposing and dignified youth. This was Zhao Jiutian. His eyes swept over the people who had arrived, pausing on Qin Yu for a moment. His lips curved up in a smile. Chief Steward Qin smiled. "Little friend Zhao, did you rest well last night?" Zhao Jiutian respectfully bowed in return. The incense that Chief Steward Qin sent is indeed of the highest quality. After a dreamless night, I have fully recovered my spirit. This conversation caused the youths behind the chief steward to feel envy. Wei Ziqing smiled. "Little friend Zhao has decided to observe for another day. After careful consideration, you can begin refining." Chief Steward Qin nodded. That should be the case. After all, refining the revival good fortune pill is not a trivial matter. His eyes were full of praise. Little friend Xiao is so cautious and isn't arrogant or rash. It is truly rare. I believe that you can refine the revival good fortune pill in the shortest time possible. Zhao Jiutian cupped his hands together. This junior will do his best to not disappoint Chief Steward and Lord Wei. Wei Ziqing smiled. That's enough. I will send little friend Xiao in first. Chief Steward Qin, please wait here for a moment. We will continue to taste the remaining half a jar of old wine from yesterday. Yesterday, because Zhao Jiutian was perceiving the pill recipe, Qin Wushang had already broken the rules by following him in. These words were a reminder. Chief Steward Qin smiled and nodded, as if he didn't notice anything. Good. Lord Wei, please return quickly. If you are late and I finish drinking the wine, then don't blame me. Wei Ziqing laughed and left. After passing through the passageway, the black door appeared in sight. Wei Ziqing whispered several more words to Zhao Jiutian and patted his shoulder. Then, he opened the door and left. Zhao Jiutian straightened himself. He didn't bother to hide his eyes as he coldly looked at him. Ning Qin, you need to hurry up. Don't fall too far behind me, otherwise it will be too boring. Ridicule, disdain, and a lofty attitude mixed in with it. It was more than just overbearing to describe it. Moreover, after this schoolmate Zhao finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and walked back into the cave, not caring at all about how Qin Yu responded. He was truly arrogant and carefree. Chapter 345. White Fengfeng angrily said, "What's so great about it? Isn't it just luck that you were a step faster? It's still unknown who will refine the revival good fortune pill first." These words caused the young cultivators to be excited. Although they didn't dare to say it so bluntly, they all had this thought in their hearts. They didn't bother with taunting Ning Qin anymore and strode into the cave. Qin Yu smiled at White Fengfeng and stepped into the cave. What was different from what everyone imagined was that after he luckily escaped yesterday, he had already made a decision that he wouldn't meditate on the good fortune tablet's dark golden runes for the next several days. However, he didn't plan on wasting these 12 hours. He closed his eyes as if he were fully immersed in meditation, but his divine sense quietly fused into the sealed dimension ring on his hand. A familiar feeling of divine sense wrapping around him and Qin Yu's divine sense appeared in the distant spatial fragment. His divine sense fused into the blood in front of him, forming a divine sense body. Qin Yu took a deep breath and an unprecedented feeling of relaxation emerged from deep within his heart. Because this was a world that belonged to him. In the distant horizon, at the end of the spatial fragment, those space cracks still existed, but the frequency at which they appeared had decreased by a great deal. The earth in front of him was still in a messy state, but Qin Yu could keenly sense that it was in the process of recovering. Those terrifying abyss-like cracks were shrinking, but the extent was too small. If it weren't for this space being in Qin Yu's perception, he wouldn't have noticed this at all. Faint traces of weak spiritual strength drilled out from the earth, fusing into the air. Although it was still incomparably thin, this was an obvious improvement. Perhaps as time passed, this space would be restored to its original appearance in the future, and it might even become more stable and formidable. This was because it was no longer the original. With the support of the little blue lamp, any miracle was possible. His thoughts stirred. Qin Yu reached out his hand and grasped the air. A blade of green grass appeared in front of him. This was the only life left in this space. After the spatial fragment was reborn, it began to display its formidable survival abilities. The extremely thin spiritual strength in the air was slowly swallowed into its body. Perhaps it was because its previous life had been far too difficult, but even this weak spiritual strength was enough to allow it to live well. Compared to when it first appeared, its branches and leaves were a full circle larger. Although it was only a stalk of grass, the fact that it could become the only living creature in this spatial fragment after the catastrophe was enough to prove that it was extraordinary. If it was brought out of this spatial fragment and came into contact with the extremely rich heaven and earth spiritual strength of the land of divinity and demons, it would likely grow in a short period of time and reveal its true terror. As this thought flashed through his mind, he discovered that the green grass in his hand began to gently shiver, as if a great fear were born within it. His eyes flickered as he slowly said, "You don't want to leave this place." The tender green leaves of the grass swayed even though there was no wind. It was obvious that they were nodding. Qin Yu was silent for a moment. Then, he smiled. "Good. Since you don't want to leave, then you can stay here." He let go and the grass disappeared, returning to the place where it grew. With a step forwards, invisible steps seemed to appear in the void, supporting his figure and allowing him to step into the skies. Strong winds howled high in the skies, but they didn't even touch the hem of Qin Yu's clothes. When they were 100 feet away, the winds parted on their own and then reformed another 100 feet away. Looking down at this spatial fragment that was 100 miles wide, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He lifted a hand and gently stroked it. In the distance, the earth began to rumble and shake. Countless pieces of earth and rocks were pushed forward by an invisible strength, tumbling into the distance. This wave appeared out of nowhere. Wherever it passed, it erased all traces, causing the earth to become flat once more. At the base of the mountain, the crushed stones that nearly buried the river began to fly away, piling up on the riverbank and raising the river. The slightly tilted mountain peak emitted a deep rumbling sound. Then, as if it were being lifted up by the hands of a demon god, it slowly straightened up until it stood tall on the earth. The speed at which space repaired itself was far too slow. Since Qin Yu possessed the strength to control this space, he could naturally speed up this process. Unfortunately, all he could do was repair the surface. The stability of the spatial fragment, the lack of spiritual strength, the withering of life, all of this required a long time to truly restore itself. At this time, Qin Yu seemed to have become the incarnation of the legendary divine god that created the heavens and earth. Wherever he looked, everything would change according to his will. Flattening the earth, rebuilding the river, straightening the mountains, all of these miraculous scenes left Qin Yu's heart filled with excitement. But as time passed, this excitement would eventually fade away. Thus, a trace of curiosity began to appear. Qin Yu wanted to know, why did he possess this strength that allowed him to control everything? Of course, he knew that this was a right bestowed upon him by the little blue lamp. But why? Or, to be more precise, what did the little blue lamp give him that allowed him to accomplish this? Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. He transmitted his questions to the spatial fragment. Then, in the world around him, countless blurry phantoms appeared. These phantoms were mostly broken. Some were even cut off at the waist, appearing in an incomparably broken state. Even so, with just a single glance, Qin Yu could feel an incomparably formidable strength contained within these broken phantoms. This was a strength that seemed to contain all things, a strength that could cover all. It was irresistible. Suddenly, these phantoms trembled for a moment before vanishing. Qin Yu was enlightened. The current spatial fragment wasn't strong enough to support their true appearance. He looked up at the sun that emitted endless light and heat. After a moment of silence, just as Qin Yu thought he wouldn't receive a response, the little blue lamp emitted a clear fluctuation. Rules, these two words entered his mind, setting off thunderous rumbling waves. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He finally understood what those blurry phantoms he saw just now were. Rules, they were actually rules. This far surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. In his initial understanding, something like rules was something that could only be sensed and understood. It was a mysterious and mystical existence. After all, when a cultivator stepped into divine soul, they had to open their soul space and strengthen their soul. Only then would they have the qualifications to sense the existence of rules. He never imagined that they could also be seen with the naked eye. He even had an intuition that he could touch the rules with his hand. The little blue lamp wouldn't lie. Then, it was clear that what Qin Yu saw now was the true form of the rules. However, this required a cultivator's cultivation to reach an extremely formidable boundary in order to have the qualifications to touch them. The current Qin Yu was far from having the qualifications to do so. But the existence of the little blue lamp allowed him to grasp this strength in this spatial fragment ahead of time. The countless blurry phantoms that flooded the world appeared in front of his eyes. Deep in Qin Yu's heart, he felt his heart race. This racing wasn't fear, but an intense excitement. He felt as if he had overlooked something, and to him, this was something that would play an incomparably important role. What was it? Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows in deep thought. His mind was in chaos. As he furrowed his eyebrows in pain, it was like a bolt of lightning flashed through the fog, directly striking his soul. A feeling of enlightenment filled him as he finally realized what it was. When a cultivator started from energy training and rose all the way to nascent soul, their lifespan would increase and their strength would become formidable. But, all of this could be seen as a cultivator tempering themselves. But from the divine soul realm onwards, the soul space would open. This was the same as a cultivator having the qualifications to peep into the world. Using the soul to comprehend the rules, merging one's body with heaven and earth, forming a connection and stepping into a new world of cultivation. At this stage, the most important thing for a cultivator was to comprehend the rules, sense them, borrow them, and control them to obtain unparalleled power. As for the rules, they were omnipresent yet untouchable. They were hidden between the heavens and the earth, and could only be comprehended bit by cultivators. The speed was slow and the requirements were extremely high. It required a cultivator to experience the vicissitudes of time, experience the vicissitudes of life, understand the world, have a tenacious soul, and possess a formidable will. Thus, the threshold for nascent soul to enter divine soul was enough to block 90% of cultivators. As for divine soul taking another step further into blue sea, that was enough to block 99% of cultivators. As for higher realms, the number was so small that it was impossible to calculate with probability. One could only say that one had a heaven-defying talent and also had a monstrous lucky chance. But today, Qin Yu seemed to have discovered a cultivation shortcut. Although he hadn't verified it yet, even if there was only a 10% chance, it was still enough to leave him excited. This shortcut was the spatial fragment he was currently in. This was because it also possessed its own rules, and Qin Yu possessed the strength to control everything within this spatial fragment. No matter how complex or difficult it was to comprehend the rules, once they were clearly presented in front of him, he could control them. If this could really be done, then once Qin Yu stepped into the divine soul realm, his cultivation speed would be completely different from that of other cultivators. Not only would he not slow down, but he would grow at an even more astonishing speed. Of course, the premise was that this spatial fragment could truly condense its own rules and not be like it was now, a blurry and broken phantom. Originally, a pure spatial fragment didn't have a complete heaven and earth, so it was impossible for complete rules to exist. This was also the reason why the vast majority of spatial fragments had restrictions on cultivations. Because once a strength surpassed the limit it could withstand entered, it would cause the spatial fragment to collapse. But the existence of the little blue lamp was the greatest variable. It was mysterious, formidable, and even the naked will to destroy the world itself. All of this was further proof that it was extraordinary. Since the little blue lamp had chosen to fuse with space, then it wasn't impossible for this incomplete spatial fragment to give birth to complete rules. Well, this explanation was indeed complicated and tongue-twisting, but it could be summed up in a single sentence. Chinyu had sufficient confidence in the little blue lamp. This was because it had never disappointed him. Chinyu took a deep breath and smiled. He was filled with endless confidence towards his future road of cultivation. There would come a day when he would be able to control his own destiny. The second day of perceiving the good fortune tablet came to an end. Unfortunately, a pleasant surprise similar to yesterday's from the Eclipse clan didn't appear. The youths all sighed inwardly. Indeed, the pill recipe for the revival good fortune pill wasn't easy to obtain. Their eyes fell on Zhao Jiutian's back as he walked away with his hands behind his back. Subconsciously, they felt a bit more awe. Respecting the strong was one of the most instinctive principles in the hearts of all cultivators. Luckily, no one had any harvests today. This caused everyone to feel a bit gratified. But this sort of situation wouldn't continue forever. On the sixth day, a young man named Wu Yuan suddenly opened his eyes, a smile on his face. He was originally suppressing himself, not wanting to make too much noise. But the wild joy that surged in his heart caused his smile to turn into a hearty laugh. Countless people's hearts shook. They silently looked over, envy in their eyes. The black door soon opened. Wei Ziqing and Chief Steward Qin walked in with smiles on their faces, sincerely congratulating Wu Yuan. The second person to perceive the pill recipe for the revival good fortune pill appeared. Zhao Jiutian's success on the first day had surpassed everyone's expectations, but it could only be considered an accident. But Wu Yuan's success placed a tremendous pressure on the youths. Under this pressure, they would either sink into oblivion or they would erupt. Thus, on the eighth day, Black Bebe became the third person to perceive the pill recipe. His success caused even more youths to clench their fists and bite their lips. The Gasa people that had used their connections to enter had all succeeded, but they were still bitterly struggling. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they had lost face. On the 10th day, there were actually 2 cultivators that succeeded in an hour. South Xiang's Fang Zinan, Waterfront's Yu Mingqing. On the 13th day, another person succeeded. On the 27th day, White Feng Feng revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. But in the blink of an eye, her eyes filled with worry as she looked at Qin Yu. This was because even today, after nearly a month had passed, the best big brother Bao Yu in her heart still hadn't had any harvests. Chapter 346. Wei Ziqing welcomed them with a smile. Then, he brought White Feng Feng away. Unlike the little girl who had a worried and reluctant expression, Lord Wei's eyes never lingered on Qin Yu. The silent bus was empty. 9 of the original 13 people were left behind in the heavily guarded square building. Starting from 10 days ago, Chief Steward Qin had been keeping an eye on the refining of the revival good fortune pill. Now, he was responsible for escorting 2 people. They could be considered familiar faces. They were 2 of the 3 divine souls that had brought them here the first time. However, the attitudes of these 2 divine soul realm martial artists were extremely cold. They sat in the carriage with their eyes closed in meditation. There wasn't even a tiny bit of the attitude they had when they were conversing with Qin Yu. No miracle happened the next day. In the blink of an eye, it was the 29th day. Today, the atmosphere on the bus was clearly stifling. Besides Qin Yu, the other 3 young cultivators all had pale complexions and their sunken eye sockets were red. It was clear they hadn't slept well last night. The bus stopped outside a square building. The 2 divine soul cultivators didn't move at all. They watched as the 4 people got off the bus and entered. Then, one of them suddenly said, "This Ning Qin, his breathing skills are quite good." Another person sneered, "What's the use? If you can't comprehend the Dan formula, you're trash. After tomorrow, you'll naturally go back to where you came from." He shook his head and cursed in a low voice. The 2 bottles of sour plum juice I gave him were worth a lot of money, but now it seems I've completely misjudged them. This brat really got lucky. The person who spoke first shook his head and didn't say anything. He felt that this junior Ning Qin was too quiet and calm. Could it be that he had something to rely on? After passing through the passageway, Wei Ziqing opened the door expressionlessly. It was his duty to open the door for the first time every day, and he could not hand it over to anyone else, but that was all. After opening the door, Lord Wei turned and left. Today, Zhao Jiutian had reached a critical moment in refining the revival good fortune pill. He naturally didn't want to waste any more time here. The good fortune tablet was still as dazzling as it was in the beginning. Qin Yu sat down and looked at the dark golden lines. He sighed inwardly. There was a time limit to perceiving the good fortune tablet. 1 month was the final time limit. If one couldn't perceive the pill recipe, then staying here for 10 years was useless. Therefore, today could be said to be his last chance, because at this time tomorrow, it would be difficult for him to meditate under the immense mental pressure. There was no possibility of comprehension at all. Qin Yu naturally didn't feel nervous at all. It was just that after waiting for an entire month, the world-killing tribulation still hadn't arrived. This left him feeling a bit restless. Because this definitely didn't mean that the will of the world was being lenient and temporarily letting him go. The only explanation was that it was currently accumulating power for a great move. This was a bit different from what Qin Yu sensed at the start. But, he could roughly guess what the reason was. The little blue lamp had fused into that distant spatial fragment and was borrowing the power of nothingness to sever all auras. Perhaps this was the last time that the world's will would easily lock onto him, so it placed even more importance on him. To Qin Yu, this definitely wasn't a good thing. But, he couldn't find a solution. His chest surged with irritation and he couldn't help but sigh. In the dead silence of the grotto, this soft sigh was incomparably clear. Immediately, the other 3 people's efforts to restrain their thoughts were broken, and an inexplicable anger rose in them. Ning Qin. Who are you trying to put on such a calm look for today? I don't believe that your heart can be so calm. Zheng Shaoguan no longer had his usual elegant and gentlemanly demeanor. His hair was messily tied up and he had a sneer on his face. Yan Mingxin, who had a good relationship with him, also had a dark and gloomy expression. I have long since disliked fellow Daoist Ning Qin's nauseating attitude. A failure is a failure, so why force yourself to appear so calm? Could it be that fellow Daoist thinks that the South Shine Nation officials will look at you differently just because you have a good mental fortitude? The last person sneered. Even if I can remain calm, what use is there even if the world collapses and I don't blink? If I can't perceive the pill recipe, then there is no need to mention anything else. Qin Yu frowned. These 3 people definitely didn't have such a rash and aggressive temperament. It was likely that the pressure was too great and their minds were unbalanced, and they had also been affected by the decaying aura of the good fortune tablet. Even so, that didn't mean that he had to endure these 3 people. Moreover, Qin Yu wasn't in a good mood right now. Zheng Shaoguan's heart was tumbling with emotions. Just as he was about to continue venting, he saw that silent figure look up. The icy coldness in his eyes caused him to stiffen and an instinctive fear to rise in his heart. No matter what he said, he couldn't speak. Luckily, at this time, the black door suddenly opened, saving Zheng Shaoguan's face. He let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he was also curious as to what had happened. Zhao Jiutian walked in with his head held high. After 20 days, he was clearly much weaker than before. There were even several strands of white in his black hair. It seemed that he had suffered greatly in refining the revival good fortune pill. But at this time, he had a proud and arrogant expression on his face. Every movement he made contained an imposing aura, as if he had an awe-inspiring spirit. Zheng Xiaoguan's heart shook. He wasn't an idiot, he knew what it meant for Zhao Jiutian to return after leaving for over 10 days. He had actually refined the revival good fortune pill. For a time, all of the anger and mockery faded away, leaving behind only a sense of loss and hesitation. Compared to him, the 4 people in the cave today were absolute losers. Zhao Jiutian strode forwards, his eyes looking straight ahead, ignoring everyone else. When he was 30 feet away from the good fortune tablet, a dark golden halo of light appeared. Originally, this light was to prevent anyone from approaching. But as it touched Zhao Jiutian's figure, it scattered and wrapped around him. Like this, there was no longer any chance of a fluke. Several envious sighs sounded out. Qin Yu stared at Zhao Jiutian, not wanting to miss a single moment. He wanted to know just what sort of changes would occur after the good fortune tablet obtained the revival good fortune pill. Zhao Jiutian took a deep breath. He took out a pitch-black jade bottle from his chest, one that was impossible to see clearly. The good fortune tablet erupted with a dark golden light that swept it away. After several breaths of time, the dark golden light appeared once more, covering Zhao Jiutian. This process didn't continue for too long. A gentle strength sent him 30 feet away. Zhao Jiutian's eyes were closed, his body gently shivering. He couldn't suppress the ecstasy on his face. One could easily guess that he had obtained unimaginable benefits from the good fortune tablet. A trace of disappointment appeared in his eyes. He had originally hoped to see something, but it was clear that his thoughts were empty. It seemed that he could only wait for himself to make a sacrifice in order to reach a conclusion. Zhao Jiutian opened his eyes, a divine light sparkling within them. After being covered in the dark golden light for several breaths of time, although there was still a bit of white in his hair, his spirit had been restored. A strange light flashed in Zhao Jiutian's eyes. He turned and locked onto Qin Yu. At the same time, he could see the disappointment on Qin Yu's face. Disappointment? His heart skipped a beat before he sneered. Even today you were still trying to play tricks on me. Ning Qin, oh Ning Qin, what qualifications do you have to express disappointment in me? The corners of his lips curled up in a cold smile. Although it wasn't too strong, it was still domineering to the extreme. Ning Qin, on the second day I warned you not to fall too far behind. It seems you didn't take me to heart at all. I am truly disappointed. Zhao Jiutian took several steps forwards and arrived in front of Qin Yu. He lowered his voice and said, in the competition, you ruined my plans and nearly cut off my future prospects. Did you ever expect today's result? If you can't perceive the pill recipe, then you have no value to the South Shine Nation. I guarantee that you will suffer a miserable fate in the future. Looking at the 2 people whispering to each other, Zheng Xiaoguan's eyes lit up with joy. Today, Zhao Jiutian had come with the momentum of refining the revival good fortune pill. Even if Ning Qin had 100 methods at his disposal, he would still be humiliated. Yan Mingxin and Qin Yu also sneered. As expected, Qin Yu took a step back. He lowered his head. He must have been filled with grief and indignation, but he had no choice but to retreat. The 3 people were waiting for something even more wonderful to occur. But what happened next caused their sneers to freeze on their faces. Their eyes widened and they froze in place, their bodies turning cold. Pa, the syllable was simple and could be emitted from many places. But the most classic was naturally the unprotected intimate contact between the face and the 5 fingers. Qin Yu slowly drew back his hand. His expression was calm and his voice light. What I dislike the most in my life is being threatened in front of my face. So, I usually strike back. If I offended you in any way, I apologize, but if there is a next time, I will still strike you. Zhao Jiutian's face rapidly swelled up and 5 clear finger marks appeared. His body shivered in anger before he suddenly calmed down. His eyes were filled with hatred. Good, very good. Since you want to seek death, how can I not help you? After being knocked to the ground, Zhao Jiutian calmly stood up. He brushed away the non-existent dust on his body and cupped his hands together towards the black stone door. Lord Wei, Chief Steward Qin, I ask that you too uphold justice for Jiutian. No one thought that after being slapped to the ground, Zhao Jiutian wouldn't stand up to fight back, but instead choose to complain. Xing Shaoguan was stunned for a moment before he secretly admired Qin Yu. A true man could bow and submit when necessary. Although this was easy to say, there were very few people who could actually do this. Zhao Jiutian's actions seemed a bit weak, but it was actually the best choice he could make. With the smallest price, he could borrow the hands of the officials to destroy Qin Yu. Today, he had used the revival good fortune pill to complete the sacrifice. This was the moment when the South Shine Nation officials placed the most importance on him. Ning Qin's slap had indeed vented his anger, but it had also forced him into a hopeless situation. Humph, you were pretending to be calm just now, so why are you acting so impulsive now? Let's see just how you deal with this. Wei Ziqing and Qin Wuxiang walked out from the door together, their complexions gloomy. Originally, the South Shine Nation officials had placed a great deal of attention on Ning Qin because of his amazing performance in the competition. But reality proved that the results of the competition didn't represent anything at all. After meditating on the pill recipe on the first day and completing the refinement in a month, Zhao Jiutian even had the possibility of refining a second revival good fortune pill. They were preparing to wantonly win him over, but Ning Qin had actually slapped him in the face. Then, they had to satisfy Zhao Jiutian before they could persuade him to continue refining pills. As for Ning Qin, since he was useless, there was no need to consider him any further. Wei Ziqing and Qin Wuxiang didn't speak. But, from their gloomy complexions, one could roughly guess what they were thinking. Zhao Jiutian's lips curved up in a cold smile. If someone dared to slap him, then they had to be prepared for eternal damnation. Ning Qin, no one can save you this time. Chief Steward Qin was expressionless. His eyes were slightly lowered. With his status, it wasn't convenient for him to act at this time. Wei Ziqing coldly said, Ning Qin, you dare to attack someone in front of the good fortune tablet? You are far too arrogant. Do you even have the slightest bit of awe towards my South Shine Nation's holy object? Men, seize Ning Qin and lock him up in the dungeon. Hold on. Qin Yu paused for a moment. Then, he smiled. After this junior slapped you just now, my mind was refreshed and I seem to have perceived the pill recipe. Chapter 347. The expectant Xing Shaoguan, Yan Mingxin, and the others all cried out in alarm, impossible. Zhao Jiutian's complexion stiffened. The ridicule in his eyes deepened. Ning Qin, have you really been scared silly? You actually dare to say such ignorant words. A pill recipe isn't something that can be perceived just because you say so. You need the ringing of a great bell to prove it. Now that everything is quiet, your lies fall apart. Qin Yu smiled. Is fellow Daoist Zhao referring to this bell ringing? He lifted a hand. The distant ringing of the bell passed through countless obstacles. By the time it reached here, it had already become extremely light. If it weren't for the door being opened, it would have been impossible to hear it from within the cave. But, it existed. The sound of this bell couldn't be faked. Zhao Jiutian's eyes revealed a look of unwillingness and resentment. Today, his plan to borrow a knife to kill Qin Yu was no longer feasible. Even if he wanted to personally attack, he wouldn't have the chance to do so. The South Shine Nation officials would never allow him to harm Qin Yu, who had perceived the pill recipe. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He swept his eyes over the shocked crowd and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. He quickly thought about it and determined just how feasible it was. Then, he immediately made a decision. Then today, he would let himself be in the limelight. He would let these people know that pill recipes were a very simple matter for him. Thus, under Zhao Jiutian's unwilling gaze, Qin Yu lifted a hand once more and pointed at the void. The bell rang out a second time. Wei Ziqing's eyes widened, his face filled with shock. At some unknown time, Qin Wushang had looked up, a sharp light surging in his eyes. But this wasn't the end. He lifted a hand and pointed a third time. The bell rang out once more. White Feng had a worried expression. Together with Black Bebe, they followed the South Shine Nation officials to choose the medicinal materials needed to refine the Revival Good Fortune pill. At this time, the first bell rang out. White Feng was stunned for a moment before she looked up. It's Ning Qin, it must be him. I knew he could do it. White Feng didn't care about choosing any more herbs. She turned and ran towards the Good Fortune tablet. Black Bebe's eyes relaxed. He quickly followed behind, leaving behind the official with a dumbfounded expression. When the bell rang out a second time, halfway there, White Feng and Black Bebe both revealed looks of surprise. They never imagined that someone would make a breakthrough at the last moment. But in this case, the possibility of it being Ning Qin was higher. The two of them smiled even more. But when the bell rang for the third time, the two of them sensed that something was wrong. It was unheard of for three people to comprehend a pill recipe in a row. A sense of curiosity arose from the bottom of their hearts. The two of them moved even faster, wanting to know what had happened. Then, as they hurried on their way, the bell rang for the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time. In the end, the two of them were no longer in the mood to count. They just subconsciously opened their mouths wide, their minds buzzing. Along the way, the cultivators they met all had shocked expressions on their faces. Everyone's mind was in a mess. Could it be that the big clock was broken? Yes, it must be broken. White Feng walked through the long passageway. When she arrived in front of the cave's entrance, she saw that everyone was left dumbfounded. Qin Yu's figure stood tall and straight in the crowd. She could see that he was slowly lifting his hand and constantly pointing it down. And with every finger he pointed, a bell would ring out. Even classmate White Feng, who had always been confident in Qin Yu, couldn't help but freeze in place. She felt as if she were in a dream. At this time, Qin Yu saw her. He smiled and nodded, a greeting. Then, perhaps because he thought that if he continued like this, everyone's eyes would pop out of their sockets. So, he drew back his hand and faintly smiled. Zhao Jiutian, does this prove that I have perceived the pill recipe? Zhao Jiutian's cheeks twitched. His lips moved, but he couldn't speak. He crazily howled in his heart. This was fake, it was all fake. There had to be a problem, or perhaps Ning Qin had done something to it. But his remaining reason told him that it was best not to speak, otherwise there would be trouble, great trouble. Because at this time, Wei Ziqing and Qin Wushang's eyes were as bright as light bulbs. The warmth in their eyes could nearly melt steel. Little friend Ning Qin, you've kept me in the dark for so long. If it weren't for today's situation, would you have continued hiding it? Chief Steward Qin bitterly smiled. He quickly walked forwards. These past days, I have been focusing on refining the Revival Good Fortune pill, so I have neglected little friend Ning Qin. Please don't take it to heart. Wei Ziqing was all smiles. I knew that little friend Ning Qin, as the #1 ranker of the competition, would one day amaze the world with a single brilliant feat just as I thought. Today was just as I thought. Qin Yu felt that he had underestimated the skin of these great figures. The fact that their attitudes could change so naturally and smoothly was truly amazing. However, this was the effect he wanted. He smiled and said, "Today, this junior couldn't restrain himself and had a conflict with fellow Daoist Zhao Jiutian. I am truly ashamed of myself." Chief Steward Qin waved his hand. There was no conflict. You are all young and impatient, so it's normal for there to be some disputes. I believe that little friend Zhao absolutely won't care about this, right? The corners of Zhao Jiutian's eyes jumped up. At this time, half his face was swollen like a steamed bun. What nonsense dispute! It was that bastard Ning Qin who hit me. He hit me. But while he could think of this, he absolutely couldn't say it out loud. He grit his teeth and squeezed out a smile. Yes, this junior doesn't care at all. Chief Steward Qin smiled in satisfaction. Little friend Ning Qin has heard it. This was all a misunderstanding. What I want to know the most right now is how little friend Ning Qin perceived so many pill recipes. Wei Ziqing suddenly said, "Lord Chief Steward, little friend Ning Qin might be tired today. Let him rest first before we discuss these matters." Qin Wushang suddenly said, "That's right. It was I who was confused." Qin Yu smiled at White Feng Feng and left with the two of them. As for Zhao Jiutian, no one cared about him anymore, even if he had just sacrificed the revival good fortune pill. In the heavily guarded and solemn-looking square building, no one imagined that there would be such a luxuriously decorated room, one that exuded a noble atmosphere. Little friend Ning Qin, are you satisfied with this residence? If you don't like it, feel free to say so. Wei Ziqing smiled. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. This junior likes it very much. Thank you, Lord Wei. It's good that you like it. Wei Ziqing's eyes flashed. Little friend Ning Qin, is it about pill recipes? Qin Yu thought for a moment. Obtaining pill recipes isn't difficult. What is difficult is how to repair the good fortune tablet's condition. After meditating for a month, I have some clues. Repair the good fortune tablet. Qin Wushang's complexion changed. Little friend Ning Qin, are you confident? Qin Yu shook his head. This junior cannot guarantee anything, but I will do my best. Qin Wushang said, if little friend Ning Qin has any requests, feel free to ask. If you can really repair the good fortune tablet, my South Shine Nation will be eternally grateful. Without staying for long, the two bid their farewells and left. Qin Wushang directly said, Lord Wei, please look after little friend Ning Qin. I must immediately return to the palace. Wei Ziqing cupped his hands together. Lord Chief Steward, please rest assured. Qin Wushang quickly left. He sat in a private carriage and raced towards the royal palace at the fastest speed possible. The journey was unimpeded. After a moment, he arrived at the royal palace's parking lot. Qin Wushang pushed open the door and left in a hurry. Soon, he arrived outside a pitch-black hall. He flashed his token to the icy guard and was allowed to enter. The transmission array in the hall lit up. Qin Wushang's figure appeared once more. He was in a dark hall, and the air was filled with the faint smell of decay. Stepping out of the transmission array, Qin Wushang fell to his knees. He respectfully said, Wushang greets the old ancestor. In the center of the hall, there was an altar with 9 oil lamps. The skeletal figure's eyes burst out with a sharp light. What happened? The voice was low and hoarse, containing an unquestionable momentum. Qin Wushang respectfully recounted today's events, not adding or deleting anything. After a long silence, the South Shine Nation's old ancestor suddenly laughed. Ning Qin. I knew that he was the turning point for me to break through my shackles and change my destiny. As I thought, he didn't disappoint me. Qin Wushang threw himself to the ground. Congratulations, old ancestor. Under the dim light of the oil lamps, the Southshine Nation's old ancestor's wizen and corpse-like face was illuminated, causing his smile to become even more sinister and horrifying. But soon, this smile vanished and he revealed a thoughtful expression. Ning Qin was able to perceive 29 pill recipes, and as you said, he might have concealed a great deal. Could it be that he has already seen through the truth of the good fortune tablet? Qin Wushang kept his mouth shut. He knew that the old ancestor was only thinking out loud, there was no need for him to say anything. As expected, a cold light flashed in the Southshine Nation's old ancestor's eyes. Tell Ning Qin that I am satisfied with his performance. Have him immediately refine a revival good fortune pill. After he offers it, the good fortune tablet will give him some hints. Qin Wushang respectfully nodded. He carefully crawled up from the ground, took several steps back, and then walked into the transmission array. Shua, Qin Wushang returned to the grand hall on the ground. As he walked out, he praised the old ancestor in his heart. The old ancestor's methods were truly swift and fierce. With just a single move, he was able to capture Qin Yu. As long as he sacrificed the revival good fortune pill, he would never be able to escape the old ancestor's grasp. To Qin Yu, a single bell ring 29 times was easy. After seeing through the dark golden runes on the good fortune tablet, obtaining the pill recipe was as easy as reaching out his hand. The reason he did this was to shock the Southshine Nation officials and also to buy more time for himself. To be able to obtain the old ancestor's attention without needing to personally refine the revival good fortune pill, in Qin Yu's opinion, this was the best result. But looking at Qin Wushang's amiable smile, he forced a smile inwardly. He knew that his little tricks were far too immature in front of the old ancestor who was so old that he had turned into a monster. At the same time, he was able to confirm that there was another reason for sacrificing the revival good fortune pill. But even if Qin Yu knew this, he still couldn't refuse. Otherwise, it would arouse suspicion and lead to unpredictable consequences. So, beneath Qin Wushang's casual gaze, he frowned and slowly nodded. The old ancestor's words are reasonable. It was this junior who was wrong. Tomorrow, I will begin refining the pill. Qin Wushang laughed. Great. Little friend, what do you need? Give me the list of materials and I will immediately prepare them. Qin Yu nodded. After marking the list, he handed the jade slip to Qin Wushang. The latter stood up and bid his farewells. Qin Yu sat in place, not moving. After a long time, he let out a long breath. He had already decided that he absolutely could not complete the pill refinement tomorrow. Even if he had to waste some of his lifespan, he had to delay it. The night passed without incident. The next day, Qin Wushang personally knocked on Qin Yu's door and led him to a brand new alchemy room. Little friend Qin Yu, the materials are all in your storage ring. Since you obtained the treasure furnace from the competition, I didn't prepare another pill furnace. Chief Steward Qin smiled. The old ancestor said that he believes little friend might be able to refine the pill today. Qin Yu felt a chill in his heart. He forced a smile. The old ancestor thinks too highly of this junior. I really don't have full confidence. Chapter 348. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. These words were clearly a reminder. It seemed that he could only use this method of refining failure once or twice at most, otherwise it would lead to trouble. This would at most delay him for another half a month, that damned world-killing tribulation, just when was it going to arrive? Qin Yu cursed inwardly. After a long time, he took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling emotions. He lifted his hand and took out 9th province as well as all the materials in his storage ring. The most obvious sign of a failure in refining the revival good fortune pill was that it would consume a cultivator's lifespan. Thus, Chinyu really had to do it. The pill recipe appeared in his mind. In truth, calling it a pill recipe wasn't too accurate. It was more accurate to call it a pure fluctuation of consciousness. Only by perceiving the cultivator could one truly understand the meaning within. Otherwise, even if the pill recipe was repeated, no one would be able to successfully refine it. This was because consciousness itself was the most difficult to control. A single mistake in understanding or expression would lead to failure. As this consciousness flowed through Chinyu's mind, he didn't need to think too much. His body instinctively knew how to refine it. He lit the furnace fire and threw in the materials. The entire process was unprecedentedly smooth, as if Chinyu had already refined this pill countless times. Every movement he made was incomparably smooth. In fact, he even began to fall into a trance. With the attitude of an indifferent bystander, he watched the entire refining process. At this time, if someone were to see Chinyu's eyes, they would discover that his pupils had enlarged to the point that they occupied his entire eye. His entire body was pitch black, strange to the extreme. After an unknown period of time, Chinyu suddenly slapped ninth province. The furnace sprung open and a pill the size of a knuckle flew out. This pill emitted a shrill cry and then split open like a giant mouth, biting down on Chinyu's finger. Gulp, gulp, a trace of fear erupted from the depths of his heart, forcefully breaking Chinyu's indifferent mood. His pitch-black eyes revealed a trace of struggle and his consciousness was filled with shock. It was like he had just experienced a dream, and when he woke up, the revival good fortune pill was about to be refined. A sour, stabbing pain, swelling feeling spread out from every inch of his body. Even his entire soul was gently shivering at this time. This was because what the pill was swallowing wasn't just his blood, but his vitality. In just a short period of time, Chinyu could feel at least 5 years of his lifespan being taken away. I can't let it condense smoothly, Chinyu sucked in a deep breath. Just as he was preparing to forcefully stop the supply of lifespan and ruin the pill formation process, a sudden sense of fear drilled out from the depths of his heart. At this moment, his body suddenly tensed up, the hairs on his back stood on end, and boundless terror enveloped his entire mind. The revival good fortune pill seemed to sense this aura. It let out a shrill howl, and the speed at which it was plundering longevity suddenly increased. Exhaustion appeared on Chinyu's face. His skin lost most of its luster and a lock of hair on his forehead began to turn gray at a visible speed. This kind of gray was not pure gray. Instead, it gave off a feeling of absolute loneliness and despair. 10 years of life. 20 years of life. 50 years of life. Chinyu could clearly feel this, but he didn't stop it. Because just now, he finally felt the aura of the world-killing tribulation. It was finally coming. Just sensing this aura was enough to make Chinyu feel as if he had died once. The might of this world-killing tribulation would inevitably reach an unimaginably terrifying boundary. Chinyu had to make the South Shine Nation's old ancestor value him 10 times, 100 times more. Only then would he be willing to recklessly protect him when the world-killing tribulation arrived. Thus, not only did Chinyu have to refine this revival good fortune pill, but he had to refine it in a way that surpassed everyone's imagination. 70 years of life. 90 years of life. 100 years. When all of Chinyu's hair had turned black and mottled, the revival good fortune pill that had been biting his finger finally escaped his mouth. It floated in the air, countless runes appearing on its surface, weaving together into a blood-red flower bud. That's right, this was a flower that Chinyu had never seen before. But, when he looked at it, he could hear countless mournful wails. Every petal was exquisite to the extreme, vivid and lifelike, as if it were really growing on this revival good fortune pill. Chinyu staggered. He suppressed the feeling of weakness that nearly caused him to collapse. He reached out a hand and picked up a jade bottle that he had specially prepared and placed it within. After doing this, he finally couldn't withstand it any longer. His vision darkened and he fell into a deep slumber. Yu had a nightmare. He dreamed that within his body, a seed had suddenly sprouted, absorbing his flesh and blood to grow. But he could only watch helplessly on as vines wrapped around him, turning him into a miserable pile of rotten bones. Ah! With a loud cry, Yu opened his eyes. At some unknown time, he had returned to his dwelling. Although his body was still sore and weak, he had recovered some of his strength. Although he knew that it was only a dream just now, as he recalled that vivid feeling, Yu felt his heart turn cold. He quickly suppressed his thoughts. The door opened from the outside. As a beautiful maid saw Yu wake up, she was pleasantly surprised. She bowed and hurried away. Soon, Chief Steward Chen walked in. But after he entered, he only glanced at Yu before standing to the side, bowing his head in respect. The old man who came in was thin and his eyes were bright and warm. A warm smile hung on his lips. Yu's eyes widened. Just as he was about to stand up, he was stopped by this old man. Little friend has spent a great deal of effort to save my South Shine Nation's holy relic. I am also grateful, so there is no need to be so polite. Looking at the smiling old man in front of the window, Yu's heart shook. He never thought that with this old man's status, he would personally come here. This old man was the incarnation of the South Shine Nation's old ancestor. Yu had already seen him at the martial field. Old ancestor, this junior is too frightened. I don't know what to say. Yu's thoughts raced. It seemed as if he had already achieved his goal. But, his face perfectly displayed the fear and trepidation that a junior should have. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor smiled, satisfied with Yu's response. You have lost a great deal of your lifespan this time. Although I have already ordered people to give you the most precious treasures, they still cannot restore your lifespan. But, I guarantee you that everything you have paid will be compensated twice as much. Chief Steward Chen said in a soft voice, Ning Chen, in order to help you recover as soon as possible, the old ancestor didn't hesitate to personally take action. You must not feel any resentment in your heart. Yu quickly shook his head. He earnestly said, everything was done voluntarily by this junior, otherwise it would have been impossible for this revival good fortune pill to absorb so much of my lifespan. His expression was calm and sincere, but his heart was heavy. To the current Yu, losing 100 years of lifespan was a price he couldn't bear. But in the face of the world's killing tribulation, he could only do this in order to survive. Chief Steward Chen praised Yu several times, praising him until he looked like a blooming flower. After Yu revealed an excited expression, he casually brought up the main topic. Ning Chen, the old ancestor's time is precious. In order to save you, he has already delayed a great deal. When do you think you can make the sacrifice? The old ancestor is also looking forward to seeing the effects of this revival good fortune pill. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor smiled, not speaking. Yu cursed inwardly. He quickly said, this junior can do it now. He struggled to stand up. There was no need to pretend at all. In his dizzy state, Yu tottered. Chief Steward Chen supported him. Ning Chen, can you continue? Yu's heart became increasingly cold. He smiled and nodded. Luckily, after walking for a while, his limbs and bones began to emit a bit of warmth. The building that housed the good fortune tablet seemed to have been cleared out today. Along the way, he didn't encounter anyone. Yu was supported all the way to the black door. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor flicked his sleeves and the door slowly opened. He was the first to enter. Chief Steward Chen let go. Ning Chen, begin. Qin Yu walked towards the stone tablet. Behind him, the South Shine Nation's old ancestor still had a calm expression. It was just that a bit more dignified and dignified. 30 feet away, a dark golden halo appeared. But it didn't stop Qin Yu at all. Rather, it impatiently wrapped around Qin Yu and pulled him close. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor's eyes erupted with a bright light, revealing a hint of excitement. An extremely rich dark golden light covered Qin Yu. A will sounded out in his mind, asking him whether or not he was willing to make the sacrifice. Qin Yu was nervous. He took a deep breath and chose to confirm. In his hand, the jade bottle that held the revival good fortune pill flew up on its own, vanishing into the dark golden light. Qin Yu could feel the jade bottle being crushed by an invisible strength. The pill that contained 100 years of his life was like a drop of water falling into the sea, falling into the good fortune tablet. In front of Qin Yu, a dark golden rune suddenly erupted with an unimaginable light. Massive sections of the blocked passage rapidly melted away. In just several breaths of time, the withered passage was restored to its original state. He could hear the excited cheers of the dark golden rune in his ears. From the brink of destruction, it had obtained a new life. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor's face suddenly flushed red. The ground beneath his feet quietly disintegrated into powder. As his eyes fell on Qin Yu's back, they turned blazing hot. Indeed, he hadn't guessed wrong. This junior was his greatest lucky chance. Qin Yu, who was regarded as the greatest lucky chance by the South Shine Nation's old ancestor, revealed a look of astonishment and shock on his nervous face. He never thought that he would encounter such a situation. Perhaps it was because the revival good fortune pill contained far too much of Qin Yu's life, but after it was absorbed by the good fortune tablet and repaired the dark golden rune, there was still some left over. It was these leftovers that preserved some of Qin Yu's blood within the pill. He didn't know what to say, but it seemed as if this blood was being absorbed by the good fortune tablet itself. Then, there was a faint bloodline connection between Qin Yu and himself. Recognizing him as master, Qin Yu never imagined that the pill he dreaded so much as a sacrifice would actually cause such a result. Like this, the good fortune tablet in front of him had become his. No, right now there was only a faint bloodline connection with him. It couldn't be considered a complete refinement. In order to truly recognize him as master, he would need more blood. Even so, through this connection, Qin Yu finally understood why the South Shine Nation regarded the good fortune tablet as a holy object and why the old ancestor regarded the revival good fortune pill with such importance. A deep chill flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He spent a great deal of effort to suppress the shaking in his heart. His thoughts raced. This was because he discovered that he seemed to have some sort of chance to turn from guest to host. But in order to do this, he would have to pay even more of his life. Chapter 349. Suddenly, the good fortune tablet gently trembled. Its small body emitted an endless momentum, as if it were an ancient divine mountain that supported the heavens and earth. Then, bathed in the dark golden light, Qin Yu's thoughts were suddenly interrupted. His eyes widened in shock, endless shock filling his face. This was because at this time, an extremely pure magic power, with the dark golden light as a medium, fused into his body through his pores. Although there was a vast amount of it, it didn't cause any pressure to Qin Yu at all. He felt as if he were soaking in warm water, so comfortable that he almost fell asleep. But right now, Qin Yu didn't have any thoughts of sleeping. His mind was filled with excitement and disbelief. This was because the magic power that fused into his body seemed to be his own strength to begin with. Without any rejection, it gathered in his Dantian Sea and was absorbed by the 5-element nascent souls. Qin Yu could hear the excited cheers of the nascent souls. As they crazily absorbed the magic power, their cultivations began to rapidly rise. Nascent Soul, 5th level. Nascent Soul, 6th level. Nascent Soul, 7th level. Nascent Soul, 8th level. Qin Yu was originally worried that this sort of rapidly rising cultivation would cause his foundation to become unstable and affect his future cultivation. But he soon discovered that he was worrying too much. The magic power that came from the good fortune tablet seemed to have been tempered countless times. After it was thoroughly tempered, it transformed into Qin Yu's cultivation. Not only did his foundation not become unstable because of this, but because he absorbed this magic power, it became even more stable than before. Finally, when the dark golden light faded away, Qin Yu's cultivation broke through another level, reaching the early 9th level of Nascent Soul. In just a moment, he had gone from the middle 4th level of Nascent Soul to the early 9th level. This was an increase of nearly 5 levels. It was simply inconceivable. Cultivation was like climbing up a mountain. The higher one went, the steeper it would be. If Qin Yu were to climb this 5 levels at a time, he would need at least 2 years. Moreover, he would need a massive amount of pills to cultivate without interruption. Only then could he just barely accomplish this. A gentle strength sent Qin Yu away. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor smiled. Ning Qin, are you satisfied with the return my country's holy object has given you? Qin Yu respectfully said, this junior is very satisfied. He had spent 100 years of his life to obtain 3 portions of the good fortune tablet and a 9th level nascent soul cultivation. He really didn't know if this transaction was worth it or not. Of course, he couldn't reveal any of his thoughts. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor laughed. Ning Qin, I have a good impression of you. Keep working hard. After giving him a deep look, he turned around and left. Chief Steward Qin's eyes flashed. He had been by the old ancestor's side for many years, so he could hear the hidden meaning in his words. Qin Yu returned to his dwelling, a dignified expression on his face. Qin Wushang could hear the meaning behind the South Shine Nation's old ancestor's words, and it wasn't as if he didn't realize it. But what should he do next? His complexion darkened for a long time. Then, he clenched his teeth and revealed a decisive look. Chief Steward Qin came to visit as expected. He didn't beat around the bush and directly stated his intentions. Little friend Ning Qin, the old ancestor is extremely satisfied with the revival good fortune pill you refined. I hope that you can refine another one. Qin Yu revealed an awkward expression. He sneered inwardly. This old fart would be able to live for at least a few more decades, so of course he would be satisfied. This was because the so-called South Shine Nation's holy object was in essence the South Shine Nation's old ancestor. 100,000 years ago, the Huluan tribe had suffered countless casualties. Finally, they seized the stone tablet that fell from the sky. The great elder of the tribe spent 100 years and finally comprehended a trace of the profound mystery. He fused his own vitality with it and borrowed the power of the stone tablet to create an almost immortal body. Like this, he lived for a full 100,000 years. That's right, the South Shine Nation's old ancestor was the Huluan tribe's great elder of the past. This matter could be called the South Shine Nation's greatest secret. The number of people that had the qualifications to know of this could be counted on a single hand. Qin Yu was only able to learn of this through his connection with the good fortune tablet. Although he already had a plan in mind, Qin Yu remained silent. He waited for Qin Wushang to state his conditions. And indeed, Chief Steward Qin said in a low voice, the old ancestor knows that refining this pill will consume a great deal of your lifespan, so he ordered me to make a promise to you. If you agree to refine it again, you can freely choose any treasures from the South Shine Nation's treasury. Qin Yu's eyes brightened as if he were moved. But there was still a bit of hesitation in his eyes. Qin Wushang wasn't surprised. The temptation of a nation's treasury could be imagined. He smiled and said, "Little friend Ning Qin, so what if I lose some of my lifespan? You are already at the 9th level of nascent soul, and breaking into divine soul is just around the corner. At that time, if you lose some of your lifespan, you can make it back with interest." As if moved, Qin Yu clenched his teeth and said, "I can agree, but I must take several more treasures." Qin Wushang lightly said, "All right." He was only a nascent soul junior. Even if he entered the treasury, how much would he dare to take? It had to be known that any random item inside was priceless. Unfortunately, Chief Steward Qin didn't know that Qin Yu already knew how important the revival good fortune pill he refined was to the old ancestor of the South Shine Nation. Thus, the following experience couldn't be considered wonderful for him. As soon as he said he would leave, Qin Yu sat in Chief Steward Qin's private car and sped towards the royal palace. On the way, through the car window, he experienced for the first time the magnificence and prosperity of the capital city. It was truly extraordinary. In the parking lot, Chief Steward Qin pushed open the door. He had made a phone call before, so there were already people waiting for him. "Little friend Ning Qin, let's go." The South Shine Nation's treasury was as he expected. It was built deep within the royal palace, and there was naturally no need to mention how heavily guarded it was. What startled Qin Yu the most was that there was a faintly discernible aura that covered the entire world. If anything were to happen, it would instantly welcome a destructive attack. A strange light flashed in Chief Steward Qin's eyes. He had deliberately arranged this so that Qin Yu would feel awe in his heart. Afterwards, he naturally wouldn't dare to be too insolent. Even so, his expression was light and carefree. He reached out a hand and gestured, "Little friend Ning Qin, please." The treasury had 9 doors, and each one had a different method of opening them. Even though Chief Steward Qin had brought a warrant, the entire process was tedious. After the 9th door opened, Chief Steward Qin let out a light breath. He smiled and said, "Welcome to my nation's treasury." At first glance, Qin Yu was shaken by the treasure light that soared into the heavens. Luckily, he was already mentally prepared. He took several deep breaths and barely managed to compose himself. This was seen by Chief Steward Qin, and he revealed a smug smile. "My South Shine Nation has been established for 100,000 years and has been passed down for over 10 generations. It is the highest level Blue Sea Nation, and our treasury collects the world's most precious treasures. There are over 100,000 of them stored within." He turned. "Little friend Ning Qin, if there is anything you need, you can tell me. I am familiar with the treasury and can help you save some time." Qin Yu took a deep breath. "I'll have to trouble Chief Steward Qin. This junior would like to ask for some treasures that can increase one's talent." Chief Steward Qin's eyes flashed for a moment before returning to normal. Little friend Ning Qin's eyes are sharp. Whether it is in value or efficacy, these treasures are indeed top choices. Please follow me. Along the way, his eyes were actually stimulated by the light of treasures, divine lights, and all sorts of other lights. The Lord Steward stopped, turned around, and pointed. Each of these bubbles is specially refined to preserve the treasures within and lock in the medicinal energy so that it doesn't leak out. "All right, little friend Ning Qin, please choose." Heaven seizing grass. 9 nether vine. Buddha fruit. Good fortune nectar. Goblin. Sweeping his eyes over them, he could see that they were all top-grade treasures. Every single one of them could be tossed out and sold for a sky-high price. Qin Yu wished that he could pack up all of these treasures and take them away. At that time, he could eat one and throw one away. If he forcefully piled them up with quantity, he could become a cultivation genius. But this was only wishful thinking. If he really dared to mention it, then he would be crazy. He walked forwards and looked around. They were all good things and he didn't want to miss out on any of them. Thus, Qin Yu soon discovered that there wasn't much to choose from. He turned and said, "Lord Chief Steward, how should this junior choose?" Chief Steward Qin smiled. "Whatever you like, just tell me." "Oh. Then I ask Chief Steward Qin to help this junior obtain this 9 nether vine." Chief Steward Qin nodded. He took out a token and shook it. The 9 nether vine flew over along with the bubbles. "Little friend Ning, take the bubbles with you. When you need them, just break them." The Lord Chief Steward sighed. In order to seal these heavenly materials, the old ancestor specially ordered dozens of array grandmasters to create these bubbles. Just these bubbles alone are worth over 100,000 spirit stones. His words were telling Qin Yu just what the price of the items he chose were. "You brat, you need to know when to stop." Qin Yu had an enlightened expression. He carefully put away the 9 nether vine and pointed a finger. "There is also this Buddha fruit." Chief Steward Qin's smile widened. He took the Buddha fruit. And also this, the 9 heavens thunder essence liquid." Chief Steward Qin didn't want to laugh anymore. As he watched Qin Yu put away the 3 bubbles into his storage ring, his heart began to bleed and twitch. "Cough cough, little friend Ning Qin, is there anything else you need?" In all honesty, this was purely a polite greeting. In Qin Wushang's opinion, Qin Yu choosing these 3 talent-enhancing treasures was already out of line. But the response he received caused his field of vision to darken. Qin Yu awkwardly smiled. This junior also wants to take a look at treasures that can strengthen the soul. "I've lost too much of my lifespan and I can't wait to enter the divine soul realm." A moment later, Chief Steward Qin cursed inwardly. "Didn't you say you wanted to take a look? You bastard. You still dared to choose. You actually dared to choose." He looked at Qin Yu and asked for a star essence soul, a sea soul flower, a god spirit grass, and a cloud-turning fruit. If it weren't for the fact that the old ancestor had ordered him to satisfy any of Qin Yu's needs, Chief Steward Qin swore that he would have smashed this greedy little bastard to pieces. "It's only 100 years of lifespan, you bastard. Do you really think an inch of your life is worth an inch of gold? You bastard." This was just a joke. Taking a deep breath, Chief Steward Qin squeezed out a smile. "Ning Qin, we should go." Qin Yu looked up, a look of surprise on his face. That expression of complete and utter disbelief nearly caused Chief Steward Qin to explode with rage. Luckily, this brat seemed to understand that he couldn't go too far. He soon nodded. Chief Steward Qin turned and led the way. His footsteps were much faster than when he arrived. If he could, he wished he could grab Qin Yu and throw him out. This bastard, what was he looking around for? Did he dare to open his mouth again? Did he really think he was made of mud? Cough cough, Lord Chief Steward, please wait a moment. Oh. Chapter 350. After another hour passed, Chief Steward Qin walked out of the treasury in a daze. Everything that had happened just now replayed in his mind. He was flabbergasted at how he had managed to hold on and not tear Ning Qin to shreds. This bastard. He clenched his teeth. When Chief Steward Qin cursed out loud, he discovered that Qin Yu's figure had already vanished from sight. That bastard, where did Ning Qin go? Several subordinates panicked. This was the first time they had seen Chief Steward Qin angered to such an extent. They quickly replied that Ning Qin saw that the Lord's complexion wasn't good just now, so he took the initiative to leave. He ran quite fast. Chief Steward Qin rubbed his temples. He could feel blue veins popping up on his forehead. He quickly took a deep breath, afraid that his blood vessels would explode from his anger. Chief Steward Qin turned and left. He had to report this matter to the old ancestor. In the same pitch-black hall, a pale-faced Chief Steward Qin stepped into the transmission array. With a flash of light, he appeared deep within the underground palace. He knelt on the ground, gnashing his teeth. Old ancestor, this old servant just sent Ning Qin away. Within the 9 oil lamps, the South Shine Nation's old ancestor lightly said, to anger you to such an extent, it seems Ning Qin's appetite is quite great. If it weren't for the old ancestor standing in front of him, Qin Wuxiang would have cursed out loud. This little bastard's actions couldn't just be described as having a great appetite. Forcefully suppressing his anger, Chief Steward Qin listed out all of Ning Qin's evil deeds. Old ancestor, Ning Qin took 3 treasures from the treasury to increase one's talent. They are, he took 4 treasures to strengthen the soul. They are, he took a set of rare spirit plant seeds, he took a supreme soul protecting treasure, he took an ancient divine sword. Even someone as calm as the South Shine Nation's old ancestor couldn't help but widen his eyes halfway through. Anger and shock filled his face. Not to mention anything else, just that set of rare spirit plant seeds was something that the South Shine Nation had spent countless years to obtain. Some of them were already extinct in the land of divinity and demons. They were absolute rarities. There were even some that he had made in preparation for breaking into the Calamity Immortal realm. But soon, these angry emotions vanished without a trace. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor had a thoughtful look on his face. He looked at Qin Wuxiang and said, "You want to remind me that Ning Qin has already sensed something?" Chief Steward Qin respectfully said, "This old servant doesn't dare to speak nonsense. It's just that Ning Qin's actions today were a bit excessive." The South Shine Nation's old ancestor nodded. "Not bad. These years of comfortable idleness haven't worn away your vigilance." Chief Steward Qin remained humble. "What does this old servant need to do?" The old ancestor smiled. "There is no need. For Ning Qin to comprehend so many pill recipes and even refine the incredibly potent Revival Good Fortune pill, it wasn't strange for him to sense something. But what he knows is only the surface, otherwise how would he dare to offer a sacrifice to the Good Fortune tablet? His complexion became tranquil once more. Give it to him and satisfy all of Ning Qin's requests. Do you understand what I mean? Chief Steward Qin kowtowed. This old servant understands. He got up and retreated. The uneasiness in his heart dissipated. Since the old ancestor was so calm, it meant that Ning Qin was clearly in control. Even if he used up all of these treasures, in the end they would still belong to the old ancestor. Qin Yu returned to his dwelling in the square building. He isolated himself with 9th province and sneered. "Did you really think that what was yours and what was mine was also yours? How naive. These things could be considered interest collected in advance for 100 years of his lifespan. The bigger part would come later." Qin Yu's eyes lit up with anticipation. He immediately went into seclusion. He was looking forward to the effects of these 3 top talent-enhancing treasures. He flipped his hand and took out a jade box. After opening it, a dark vine appeared. It seemed to contain an absolute low temperature, constantly emitting a bone-chilling chill. 9 nether vine. Qin Yu lifted a hand and pointed a finger at it. After fusing his aura into it, the 9 nether vine flew up and circled above his head. 12 hours later, there was a light popping sound and the Buddha fruit above his head completely vanished. Qin Yu's eyelids trembled and he slowly opened them. Without pausing, Qin Yu took out an essence chin pill and swallowed it. A moment later, he opened his eyes. There was a hint of joy in them, but they soon turned to helplessness. According to the test results of the 9-level Crystal Pagoda, Qin Yu's initial talent was at the 1st level. After using the Blue Jade Crystal Lotus and Nirvanic Lotus Seeds in the Tao Arena, he was at the peak of the 1st level. Then, after refining the 9 nether vine, 9 heavens thunder essence night, and the Buddha fruit, Qin Yu's talent had just barely reached the 3rd level. In the land of divinity and demons, there was no value in raising anyone below the 4th level of talent. A 3rd level talent was nothing more than a pile of mud on the ground. But from Qin Yu's point of view, this was already an astonishing improvement. This was why he was so happy. But as he thought about how even an ordinary cultivator could become a rare cultivation genius by relying on these 3 treasures, Qin Yu couldn't help but bitterly smile. These were the most precious treasures of the South Shine Nation's treasury. If it weren't for the fact that he had caught the South Shine Nation's old ancestor, he wouldn't have had the slightest chance of obtaining them. It seemed that the road of increasing his talent was destined to be a long and arduous one. Qin Yu shook his head and suppressed these thoughts. He stood up and walked into the bathroom. After soaking in a comfortable hot spring bath, he changed into a clean white bathrobe. Standing in front of a mirror that occupied nearly half the wall, Qin Yu looked at his own gray and black hair. He frowned for a moment before composing himself. The world was fair. There were gains and losses. If he wanted to survive the world-killing tribulation and if he wanted to obtain a greater good fortune and pave his future road of cultivation, he naturally had to pay a price. 100 years of his lifespan in exchange for his current situation. Of course, it seemed that 100 years wasn't enough. But this transaction was still worth it. Moreover, he had already chosen his path, so there was no need to worry about it. Besides making himself restless, there was no benefit. He put on the black robe. This robe formed from the demon god armor had an automatic cleaning function, saving him the trouble of changing clothes. Moreover, he could change the style to his heart's desire. Unfortunately, Qin Yu didn't like gaudy things and was very casual about what he wore, wasting this effect of the demon god armor. Qin Yu pushed open the door and sat down cross-legged. He organized the things he obtained from the South Shine Nation's treasury and decided not to continue refining them. Instead, he took out several pills and swallowed them. The world-killing tribulation would arrive soon. Even if he was confident that the South Shine Nation's old ancestor would protect him at all costs, that didn't mean he was foolproof. At this time, increasing his cultivation was the most important thing. Even if it was just a bit more strength, it might be able to save his life in a life-or-death situation. 5 days later, Qin Yu decided to refine pills again. This was because he didn't have much time left. Chief Steward Qin personally escorted him to the alchemy room. He earnestly said, "Ning Qin, what the old ancestor needs is the same revival good fortune pill as the first one. Do you understand?" Qin Yu nodded. "This junior understands. Chief Steward Qin, please rest assured." He strode into the alchemy room, a cold sneer on his face. "Even if you don't want it, this young master still wants to obtain the good fortune tablet as soon as possible." The first time he refined the revival good fortune pill, because it sensed the aura of the world-killing tribulation, it caused a change and caused it to absorb 100 years of his lifespan. If he wanted to refine another similar revival good fortune pill, it was impossible for him to do so by himself. He could only rely on the aura of the world-killing tribulation once more. As for the little blue lamp, the foundation of the revival good fortune pill was Qin Yu's lifespan. No matter how heaven-defying it was still helpless. Luckily, Qin Yu had already expected this. Without accident, he should be able to duplicate the revival good fortune pill. He opened the furnace and began to refine the pill. This time, another pill recipe was activated in his mind. Then, Qin Yu took the initiative to give up control of his mortal body. In a situation where he was prepared, he tried his best to maintain a trace of clarity. Qin Yu discovered the current state of his mortal body and couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. This good fortune tablet was truly terrifying. Just a wisp of consciousness was actually able to have such a great influence. But as he thought about how this good fortune tablet would soon belong to him, Qin Yu's mood brightened. The refining process went smoothly. When the revival good fortune pill flew out of 9th province, Qin Yu bit down on his fingertip. Ripples seemed to appear in his pitch-black eyes. He lifted his other hand and grasped upwards. The phantom of a great sun that had shrunk countless times appeared. In the depths of this sun phantom, there was a thumb-sized lantern. In the next moment, a horrifying aura arrived. Qin Yu stuffily coughed and his face paled. The great sun phantom between his fingers trembled as if it were withstanding an invisible pressure. With a loud cracking sound, it shattered. The revival good fortune pill emitted a shrill scream. The speed at which it plundered his lifespan rose. Qin Yu shivered, a trace of relief and fear crossing his heart. Relief was because his judgment was correct and there was no problem with this revival good fortune pill. As for fear, it was because the heavenly tribulation's killing tribulation was already very, very close. Within 7 days, it would inevitably arrive. Moreover, Qin Yu had a faint intuition that if he summoned the little blue lamp phantom once more, the world-killing tribulation would directly arrive. Perhaps it was because he had the experience of having his lifespan crazily plundered before, or perhaps it was because his cultivation had risen to the 9th level of nascent soul, but his resistance had increased. Qin Yu didn't fall unconscious this time. Instead, he dragged his sweat-soaked body and opened the alchemy room doors. He met Qin Wushang's eyes and nodded. He saw a smile on his face, but it was actually a forced one. Chief Steward Qin thought he was feeling unwell and didn't think too much about it. He warmly said, "Someone, bring little friend Ning Qin to rest." Qin Yu waved his hand. "This junior can still persist, so let's first complete the sacrifice." Qin Wushang naturally didn't have any objections to this. He pretended to worry about Qin Yu's body, but after a moment of hesitation, he agreed. He clapped his hands and the 4 expressionless guards that had been standing guard outside the cave suddenly appeared, carrying a soft sedan. "Little friend, please." Qin Yu smiled and nodded. He cursed these hypocrites inwardly. They had even prepared the sedan and yet they were still pretending. As he thought, he had underestimated the thickness of these old fellows' skin. He needed to be more mentally prepared in the future. Without speaking, Qin Yu closed his eyes in meditation. When he opened them, he had arrived outside the black door. Wei Ziqing was waiting here. He took out a token and opened the door. Then, he said to Qin Yu, "Little friend, you were able to refine 2 revival good fortune pills in such a short period of time. That is truly admirable." Behind him were 2 people, White Feng Feng and Black Bebe. Seeing Qin Yu look at them, Wei Ziqing smiled and explained, "Little friend Black has just completed the sacrifice. He is a good young man." Qin Yu relaxed a little. It seemed that this girl White Feng Feng hadn't completed the refinement yet. He should find a chance to remind her. As for Black Bebe, he could only rely on his luck in the future. Qin Yu smiled at White Feng Feng. "Wait a moment. Come to my residence. There are some things I need to talk to you about." There was no need to avoid it too much. After all, it wasn't a secret that the 2 of them were relatively close. White Feng Feng looked at his head. His hair had already turned completely gray and her eyes reddened. She quickly nodded. Without further delay, Chief Steward Qin led Qin Yu in. Even Wei Ziqing stayed outside on his own initiative. Chapter 351. Qin Yu began to offer his sacrifice. The process wasn't any different from the first time. The only difference was that the good fortune tablet or the South Shine Nation's old ancestor gave him more magic power. Soon, the 5-element nascent souls erupted with divine light. They had reached their limit and were unable to absorb any more. But with the dark golden light as a medium, pure magic power continued to pour into his body. Surprise flashed in Qin Yu's eyes, but he didn't panic. This was because he was sure that whether it was the Good Fortune Tablet or the South Shine Nation's old ancestor, neither of them would harm him right now. And indeed, as magic power continued to pour into his nascent souls, invisible shackles began to appear in the dark golden light. This shackling strength fell onto Qin Yu's nascent souls. It was like layers upon layers of shackles, wrapping around them and giving them an extremely powerful withstanding ability. Thus, magic power continued to pour into the nascent souls. In a situation where the nascent souls were imprisoned and couldn't explode, the magic power began to condense. This was certainly a good thing. After condensing the magic power, the quality would greatly increase. Moreover, the nascent souls could free up space. But to Qin Yu, this was an extremely refreshing enjoyment. The general feeling was like you were filled to the brim, but there was still a large hand that was trying to open your mouth and stuff it inside. And the key point was that you couldn't stop it and you could still eat it. It was only after an hour that the dark golden light faded away. When Qin Yu was sent 30 feet away, he staggered and nearly fell down. The ground began to crack and crack. He turned around and retched. After a long time, he barely managed to calm down. Chief Steward Qin's eyes revealed a look of understanding. He had already guessed the old ancestor's thoughts. His eyes fell on Qin Yu's back, a light flashing in his eyes that soon turned warm. Little friend, only by experiencing hardship can you rise above others. Your harvests today are enough to make countless proud children of heaven envious. Qin Yu cupped his hands together and weakly nodded. He naturally knew that what the other party said was the truth. This was because he was still at the 9th level of nascent soul. But the difference between his current 9th level nascent soul and his previous cultivation was as great as the heavens and earth. In terms of pure magic power, he was at least twice as strong as before. This was because the Good Fortune Tablet was consolidating his foundation. If Qin Yu told others in the future that he walked the Golden Core faction, no one would believe him. Nonsense, with your sturdy concrete foundation, saying that it was built up by the accumulation of medicinal pills, who are you trying to bluff? Disregarding everything else, just this foundation alone was enough for him to compare with the top proud sons of heaven within the land of divinity and demons. And the more solid one's foundation was and the deeper one's background was, the greater the increase in one's combat strength would be when they broke into the divine soul realm. This was simply an opportunity that countless cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. Unfortunately, only the most valued descendants of the superpowers had the qualifications to enjoy it. This was because one needed to be at least a peak Blue Sea Realm super powerhouse to have the qualifications to act. Moreover, this would have a certain influence on one's cultivation. The South Shine Nation's old ancestors' rewards were truly generous, but what a pity, he didn't have any good intentions. After completing the sacrifice, the soreness in his body was alleviated as his cultivation rose. But his soul was still filled with exhaustion. He suppressed the discomfort and his thoughts raced. Lord Chief Steward, this junior is very tired. I will bid my farewells first. There was a hint of hesitation in his eyes. Qin Wusheng furrowed his eyebrows. Ning Qin, is there something you need? Qin Yu forced out a smile. No. Watching him leave, Chief Steward Qin's thoughts raced. He felt that something wasn't right with Ning Qin's performance. White Feng Feng had been waiting outside the entire time. When Qin Yu came out, his eyes flashed. He said, "Since you're waiting here, come with me." The two didn't speak. They returned to Qin Yu's residence. After the door closed, Qin Yu took out 9th Province and sat down on the sofa. He smiled and said, "Sit." White Feng Feng's eyes turned red. Big brother Baoyu, your hair, woo-woo, how could it be like this? Qin Yu was a bit moved. Although White Fingfing's actions were inexplicable, he could still judge whether or not she was sincere. He smiled and said, "It's fine. I just lost a bit of my lifespan for a short period of time. It will slowly recover." He hesitated for a moment and said, "Miss White, what I am about to tell you, whether or not you believe me, I hope you can keep it a secret." Seeing her nod, Qin Yu slowly said, "If you haven't refined the Revival Good Fortune pill yet, then it's best if you don't. This is my advice." White Fengfeng nodded. "All right, I won't refine it." Qin Yu was surprised. White Fengfeng earnestly said, "I believe in Big Brother Baoyu. You absolutely won't harm me." Qin Yu revealed a gratified look. Although this girl's eyes gave him a bit of a headache, it was still a good feeling to be trusted by someone. To speak with such a beautiful girl who trusted him completely, even if he didn't harbor any other thoughts, it was still enough to make him feel happy. Unfortunately, Qin Yu's current state meant that he urgently needed to rest. He forced a smile and said, "Then let's do this. I need to rest for a bit." White Fengfeng reluctantly bid her farewells. She vowed that she would definitely find a treasure that could restore her lifespan and allow her big brother Baoyu's hair to turn black once more. What a naive little fellow. As he thought about how he was still casually using a fake name to interact with her, Qin Yu rubbed his nose and revealed a bit of embarrassment. But now wasn't the time to be embarrassed. What he really needed was a good rest. He leaned back and sank into the soft sofa. After choosing a comfortable position, Qin Yu let out a light breath and closed his eyes, falling asleep. This sleep lasted for a day and a night. When Qin Yu woke up, it was deep in the night. In the darkness, his eyes flashed with a brilliant light. He looked up at the clock on the wall. The time wasn't wrong. In other words, there were 6 more days before the world-killing tribulation would arrive. Although he had already determined this, Qin Yu still couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. He took a deep breath, his thoughts racing as he pondered over the entire plan. 4 hours later, Qin Yu let out a long breath. He stood up and walked into the bathroom. After washing up, he dressed himself and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. He reached out and pulled open the curtains. A hazy white light shined in. The eastern sky was bright and a new day was about to begin. Soon after, there was a knock on the door. Qin Yu opened it and, as expected, it was Qin Wushang. The Lord Chief Steward warmly smiled. "I heard from the maid that little friend had opened the curtains, so I knew you had woken up. I hope I didn't disturb you." Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Chief Steward is too serious. Please enter." He turned to the side and invited him in. As he closed the door behind him, a sharp light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. Now, it was time to show off his acting skills. Although he was lacking in shamelessness compared to these old things, after experiencing so many shady things, in terms of pure acting, he had some confidence in himself. Moreover, he had already prepared this play. Qin Wushang had no idea that he had already taken the lead. He asked Chief Steward Qin to sit down. Qin Yu was silent for a moment. Then, he said, "If Chief Steward is here today to persuade me to continue refining the Revival Good Fortune pill, then there is no need to say anything more." Qin Wushang's complexion was calm, as if he weren't surprised at all. He nodded, 200 years of life. To a nascent soul cultivator, that is a quarter of their lifespan. It truly cannot be ignored. But once one breaks into divine soul and senses the rules of the great Tao, the loss of one's lifespan will slow down according to one's comprehension of the great Tao. A divine soul cultivator has a lifespan of 1,600 years, but there are many people that live past 3,000 years. Compared to 3,000 years, 200 years was naturally insignificant. Qin Yu revealed a bitter expression. He slowly shook his head. In truth, it isn't because of my lifespan, Qin Wushang frowned. Qin Yu's reply was unexpected. Although he had brought a condition that this junior couldn't refuse, he still felt a trace of unease in his heart. Why? Qin Yu shook his head, his complexion paling. Chief Steward, there is no need to ask. No matter what, this junior will not refine the revival good fortune pill again. Qin Wushang took a deep breath. What if I tell you that the old ancestor has prepared a deva soul for you? Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He never imagined that the old ancestor would be willing to pay such a price. Deva soul, it was said that any nascent soul could refine it and directly ascend to divine soul. To any cultivator below the divine soul realm, this was an unimaginable temptation. Qin Yu's breathing quickened. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and shook his head. Chief Steward Qin, this junior cannot agree. Qin Wushang had no expression. Ning Qin, do you think that my South Shine Nation isn't sincere enough? What do you want? Feel free to ask. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. On that day, this junior already obtained an astonishing amount from the treasury, so how could I dare to ask for more? It's just that I absolutely cannot refine the revival good fortune pill again. Seeing that Qin Yu didn't seem to be lying, Qin Wushang frowned. He stood up and said, very well, I will give you some time to consider. He turned and left. Chief Steward Qin suddenly remembered that when Qin Yu refined the pill yesterday, there seemed to be something wrong with him and he didn't seem too happy about it. Did something really happen? He didn't dare to delay. He rode a carriage back to the royal palace and reported Qin Yu's response to the South Shine Nation's old ancestor on the underground altar. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor frowned. In the dim underground palace, the air suddenly thickened like a swamp. Ning Qin refused the Deva soul. Qin Wushang fell to his knees. Yes. This old servant carefully observed him. His performance was very sincere. You are saying that Ning Qin really doesn't want to refine pills again. That should be the case. Qin Wushang hesitated for a moment. Old ancestor, Ning Qin seems hesitant to speak, as if he is afraid of something. As he thought about it, he became increasingly certain. Now that I think about it, Ning Qin's performance seems to be faintly afraid of something. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor's eyes flashed with the light of thunder. Without any movement from him, a phantom suddenly walked out from a nearby oil lamp. In the blink of an eye, this phantom became solid, no different from a real person. It was an avatar that Qin Yu had seen before. I'm really curious. Just what is his reason for doing this? Qin Wushang left and returned. He brought with him a person that Qin Yu couldn't help but bitterly smile. Looking at the panicked expression on Qin Yu's face, the South Shine Nation's old ancestor faintly said, Ning Qin, I didn't come here to force you to refine pills. Rather, I want you to give me a reasonable explanation. Qin Yu's complexion paled even more. He swept his eyes around with unease. It's not that I want to refuse, but I really don't dare to continue refining the revival good fortune pill. The South Shine Nation's old ancestor narrowed his eyes. Someone is threatening you. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.